So what was my time setting up? Was it actually 15 minutes or was it longer?
No, less than that.
We're rolling, by the way. I just come in as what was it? Bill O'Reilly would say. We'll do it live.
Yeah, there you go.
And I'll just do one more check.
All right.
Yeah, you sound good, man.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Got a good radio voice.
Apparently. That's a rumor.
I did. Well, let's cheers first.
Yeah,
I really
cheers.
appreciate you doing this.
Yeah,
oh,
man.
nice
Yeah.
glass, man.
Oh, yeah,
The football thing.
That's right. I'm partial.
If I hadn't been running late, I would have stopped by and grabbed. This is how much of a beer snob I am. I have the whole set of proper beer glasses depending on the style. So there's an IPA glass, there's a Pilsner glass, there's a stout glass, there's a Belgian glass, a wheat beer glass.
Okay. What's an IPA glass look like?
It is the one that has a heavy wide base, comes thin, then wide, and then I think thin again at the top.
Oh, interesting.
The whole point, it's supposed to, because, IPAs are all about aroma.
Sure.
So it's supposed to, I think, funnel the hop aroma as you're drinking it.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I can still get the aroma in a regular pint glass. So I don't know. They probably overthink this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And if they tell you it's true,
Yeah, well, once you get that planted in your mind.
That's right. Well, hey, man, if you're a beer snob, this is beer mecca out here.
It is. Because I was technically born in California, but ever since age 2, I grew up Canby, Oregon, which is just south of Oregon City.
Right.
Have lived in Salem, Monmouth, and Bend for a while, and now Vancouver. But I've pretty much been in this area my whole life. And, yeah, so I was here. My first craft beer, if you will, was Widmer's Hefeweizen back in, 92 when I turned 21.
Very good.
Yeah, 92 or 93, whatever that was. And I remember, because other than that, I wasn't a big drinker at that age, but the only beers I'd had were, Bud Light, Coors Light, whatever. I took a sip of that Hef, and I was like, what is this?
What is this shit?
There's way too much flavor. This is gross.
So I need beer-flavored water that I'm used to.
Yeah, and now, don't bring me a Coors Light. I can't even stand it.
I can't.
Maybe on a hot summer day, if you're on the lake, maybe.
Nah. I feel like Coors Light or a Bud Light or Miller Light, if a nickel could urinate, that's probably what it would taste like. That'd be my guess.
They're great companies. We're not bashing anybody.
No offense.
Just it's our personal taste, not our favorite.
Yeah. No, being from Texas, the cheap beers with Lone Star, that was the one.
Oh my gosh, we could talk about that because I can't remember. I sent you some episodes. So have you had a chance to kind of get an idea what it's about?
I listened to some stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I don't have to go through the whole intro. But obviously, it's an origin story about you.
Sure.
So born and raised in Texas?
Yeah, born in Austin.
Okay.
And,
Austin, right on.
Yeah.
That's
So
kind of the
Austin
hotbed of
Hospital.
where everybody's moving to
That's
now.
right. Word got out. It's a good place to be.
When's the last time you were back?
We went back. So my mom and stepdad are still in Austin, and we went back for the Christmas holidays.
Okay.
/ Hanukkah holidays.
Okay.
Being a Goldstein, we celebrate that one too.
Okay. Oh, so that's you or your
That's
family?
me. Yeah.
Okay.
That's. But my mom and stepdad are still in Austin, and then my dad and stepmom are in Katy, Texas, outside of Houston.
Okay, which Houston from Austin is a couple hours?
Yeah, it's like 3.5 hours or so, depending on how fast you drive.
Because I did a stint as an over-the-road truck driver, so I've been through Dallas-Fort Worth, I've been through Amarillo, I've been through Houston, but I never made it through Austin.
Austin's the spot, man.
Well, yeah, again, it seems like that's the hotbed where everybody's moving.
Yeah,
especially during the pandemic.
Yeah, and it definitely got a little overcrowded. It's always been somewhat crowded, and traffic's always been shitty there. But with all the people that have come in, there's been actually a big influx, and then people experience the summer there, and then there's a big, efflux.
Is it just super hot and dry in the summer, or is it muggy?
It can be muggy. Austin's kind of hit or miss, but if you're going out towards Houston, that's on the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, you get closer to the Gulf.
Yeah. Okay. If you're thirsty, you can just take a deep breath. Or you'll get. I remember, I'd be at my dad's place and I'd get ready to go out for the night, and I'd showered, I'm clean, feeling good. Step outside, and I'm wet again. I was like, what the fuck?
You have to have the car running with the AC blasting and sprint from the door to your car.
Pretty
jump
much.
in,
and then you'll still be sweating by the time you get to the car. But yeah, so I was born in Austin, lived with my mom and dad until they split up when I was 5.
Okay.
Dad had, ended up remarrying, and he started working. He was working in Austin, and then he started working in Houston, and then his ex-wife, my evil ex-stepmother, she was not the best person.
Okay.
But she was in Johnson City, and he would kind of split time between there. But I moved to Wimberley, Texas, which is just outside of Austin, a little one-stoplight town.
Is it almost a suburb, or is it like an hour out?
No, it's like an hour. It's out in the woods. It's in
Okay.
the middle of the hill country. It's called the Village of Wimberley. It was about 3,000 people, 2,900 people, I think, when I was there.
Okay.
So my older sister, I have a sister that's 3 years older than me. We moved with my mother and the man who would become our stepfather.
Okay.
My stepdad, Ivan.
You might know this. You don't have to share anything you don't want. I mean,
Totally.
obviously, I'm interested in your family and personal story, but whatever you don't want to talk about, there's no pressure.
Yeah, totally. No. I'm pretty much an open book about a lot of this stuff. I mean, it's.
And I was trying to do the math there. So your parents are married, get divorced when you're 5. Your dad ends up with the former stepmom.
Yes.
Now he's with his current wife.
Yes. Now he got divorced again, and then he is now married to my current stepmother, with whom he has 3 more kids.
Oh, so you have half siblings.
Yeah,
Right
definitely.
on.
Yep.
And they're in Katy.
They're in Katy. Yep.
So
And
I'm on my 3rd marriage too, so I can relate.
Okay.
Your dad rocks. So.
Yeah. No, he's doing well, and it's funny because my son Bodie, he's 7.
Mm-hmm.
Then my 2 little brothers are his, and my little sister are his aunt and uncles.
Yeah.
And they're only 3, 5, and 6 years older than him. So it's funny to be hanging out with his uncle who's only like a handful of years older than him.
That is. So obviously your dad and his 3rd wife had children later.
Yes, yeah.
Was
She's much younger than him. So.
Was your dad a young father with you?
He was. Yeah, he was born in 59. I believe he was early 20s whenever he had my sister, and then a couple years later he had me.
Okay.
He said that because of how my sister and I were and the experience he had being our father, that he wanted to do it again.
Oh, okay. So it was all good.
It was all good.
That's awesome.
And he was worried that we would feel like we were being replaced in some sense, but we never felt that way. We just wanted him to be happy. After his second marriage was pretty bad, and she had really separated him from the family and made him feel. She kind of emotionally abused him. My dad's a stud. Like, he's a cardiovascular anesthesiologist. He's one of the He's one of the most brilliant men I've ever met in my life. But my ex-stepmother had a knack for making him feel small, and like he actually didn't want my sister and I to be around much because he didn't want us to be around her. And so she had kind of separated him to a point where he really was feeling disconnected from the family, even though the rest we were there, and like including my whole dad's side of the family, the Goldsteins.
Yeah.
They stayed close to my mother. They loved my mother. And it just it got to a point where whenever they got divorced, he really was craving community, and he started going to the Chabad house near the hospital they worked at, and he got tight with the rabbis there, and he got into Orthodox Judaism. Okay. And so, but we've always been Reformed. I tell people I'm Jewish. So
feel free to explain the difference. Reformed and Orthodox.
So Reformed. So Judaism's a little. It's interesting in that. The way I think about, Judaism is it's kind of like a suitcase that was, because the ancient tribes of Israel, in Judea and Samaria, they had culture, they had language, they had religion. Mm-hmm. There's ethnicity, like it is its own, ethnicity essentially. And when the Romans initially conquered the area and dispersed them, they wanted to take what it was to be a Jew with them in a sense. Okay. Right? So Judaism is a combination of all these things that you can kind of mix and match. Like, I'm not very religious, but I still consider myself to be Jewish.
Right.
If it was that,
because like you said, it's not just a religion, it's a cultural thing.
Right. And so Orthodox Judaism is just a little bit more observant, is what is the term that we would use. So a little more religiously oriented. He abides by the Sabbath when he can. If he has to work, he has to go to work. But if he's at home, on Saturday night going into Sunday, he won't tie knots, wear slip-on shoes. He won't extinguish or ignite flame. That includes electronics.
Is this the term? And it makes me laugh. Big Lebowski. Have you seen the movie?
Yeah,
So there's a scene where Walter, his
Shomer
friend,
fucking Shabbos.
Shomer Shabbos. Is that how you say it? Shomer Shabbos.
Yeah, that's
Shomer fucking Shabbos.
Shomer is like
I don't drive a car. I don't do whatever.
I don't do fucking work. I don't roll.
I don't. And I don't
not
fucking
Vietnam,
roll.
Donnie. There are rules. Stepped over the line, market 0, dude.
One of the greatest movies of all time.
Shut the fuck up, Donnie.
But Shomer Shabbos, is that what you're referring to with the Saturday to Sunday?
To be honest, I don't even really know what that specifically entails. But yeah, I and don't quote me on this, but I think what that means is that you abide by the Sabbath, right? You know,
Okay.
and maybe a sect of Judaism that's a little more adherent to some of
Right.
those old principles.
Yeah.
But it's funny because my dad, it'd be Saturday, or so I guess it's Friday going into Saturday. See, I'm not a very good Jew. I don't know all the rules.
Don't let your dad watch this.
Yeah, right. No, he's like, oy vey. He's verklempt.
Oy vey,
Yeah.
yes.
But he's like, you look like a schmuck. No, he doesn't talk like that. But anyways, it'd be Saturday, and he'd be like, I wonder what's going on with the college football games, because he wouldn't turn the TV on. And I was like, oh, you just wonder that out loud to his heathen child. You want your heathen child to
because it's
to
okay
turn
if
it
you
on?
do it.
Right. Yeah.
I
Right.
love it.
There's a lot of weird rules. Like if they wanted a hot meal, at on night of the Sabbath, they would have to make a pot of chili, turn on a hot plate, put it on, turn on low, so that it would be on all the way through the night and into the next day, so they wouldn't have to ignite or extinguish the flame the next day and break the Sabbath.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, strange rules.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. But and if he had to, I mean, he would. If he had to go to work, he'd go to work.
Right.
But he had separate, dishwashers and separate sinks for meat dishes, dairy dishes, and parve, which is anything else that's kosher.
Right.
You can't mix meat and cheese if you're staying kosher. I was like, so no cheeseburgers or anything.
And
But
that's all the time, not just on the Sabbath.
That's all the time.
Yeah.
That's all the time. But we grew up. My sister and I grew up with my mother, who wanted us to keep in touch with our Judaism, but she's a proclaimed atheist, and she, if we were talking religion, she's like, I don't believe in fairy tales. That was her take on
Atheist or agnostic?
it.
There's a fine line.
Straight up atheist,
Oh,
which I always
okay.
found to be, it was the irony and the certainty of someone that says I'm an atheist. Always struck me, because it's like, well, you're saying that with certainty in the same way somebody is saying with certainty there is a God. It's like, it's kind of, hypocritical in a way. But, I didn't
No, it's because I used to call myself an atheist, but then I was like, that's not very intellectually honest. I can't prove a negative. I can't prove he doesn't exist.
You can't disprove.
Exactly.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So, I'm going to say, hey, I see no evidence of it. That's what I say.
Yeah.
So.
And that's a good way to approach it, is to understand that, whenever we are trying to make truth claims, right, the ability to disprove something is what is needed in order to make a truth claim. Really, if you can't disprove it, I mean, that's like with a lot of Freudian type of stuff, like psychodynamism and psychoanalytic type things, like dream interpretation. Right?
Oh yeah.
Someone can tell you that it means something, but you can never really disprove that, so you can't really prove it to be actually true. Right?
The whole point of the scientific method is you're always trying to prove it wrong.
You're trying to disconfirm the null hypothesis, right? So I was a scientist for years before I got into chiropractic, so that was like my world, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I took kind of a wayward route, getting to where I am now.
Into being a chiropractor.
Being a chiropractor, yeah.
What field of science did you go to school for and all that?
Yeah, so being in Wimberley, it was a small town, but we had a decent school, and my older sister went to Trinity University in San Antonio, which was it was Rice University and Trinity were kind of considered some of the top two in Texas.
Okay.
And so I had the mindset I didn't want to go far from home. In retrospect, I kind of wish I had applied to some other schools, but I kind of had my heart set on where my sister was going. Applied, got good scholarships, and decided to go there. They had a really great psychology program.
Okay.
They also had a really great pre-med program, which, technically I was a pre-med student, because I thought that because my dad did anesthesia, my aunt was a psychiatrist, my other uncle was a psychiatrist. We got a lot of MDs and RNs in the family on the dad's side of the family. Yeah, dad's side of the family are all MDs and RNs, and there's a PhD over there, and then mom's side of the family are musicians. So kind of interesting.
That explains so much with your artistic side, obviously blended with your scientific mind.
Yeah.
Oh my
So
God.
we're an interesting mix, But so I had some really great psychology professors, and at Trinity, you had the opportunity to actually be a part of a study, not as a participant, but as maybe a proctor or somebody that was actually performing the research.
Right.
Which most of the time in undergrad programs, you don't really get the opportunity to do so.
Oh.
So I had a really close bond with the chair of the psychology department there, and I was in her lab doing research on working memory and some political reasoning type of research. And, I took all the classes to go to med school, and I was a psych major. I really enjoyed psychology, and I was like, I got to the point where I was about to take the MCAT, and I was like, I don't think I really want to do this. I had some buddies who had gone to med school, and just talking with them, one of them said that he felt that he was suffering from what he called moral insult with how our medical system is, where it's not, he said that, it was clear that patient outcomes was not always the thing that was driving things in modern Western allopathic medicine.
Got it.
And so taking that into account, and then also I just didn't med school sounded super hard, and I just was like, I don't know if I want to do
more
that
depth
shit,
unless you can get scholarships. But yeah,
right. And I was like, and and then talking to my advisor, I was like, well, shit, what else could I do? And she's like, well, you seem to have a knack for science, for psychology science, and so should you ever thought about becoming a professor? And I was like, actually, no, but that sounds interesting. She was like, apply to look at some programs and see if there's anything that interests you, and do some applications. After she had me, her name was Carol Yoder. She was a great professor. She had me look into some of the programs and look at what it would take to get into the programs.
Okay.
And so, I had some research chops under my belt from my undergrad experience, but she was saying that if I wanted to do a PhD route, and do R1, like high-level academia, then I would need to have some more things on my CV to be able to apply to these programs.
CV is?
Curriculum vitae.
Okay.
So it's just essentially a resume, fancy resume for academics.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, shit, maybe I can be a college professor. I mean, I like to talk. There was no, awkward silences in my
the
class.
audience, and they have to listen to
me. They have to listen. Like, you're gonna fucking listen to me whether you like it or not. I just like communicating ideas, and it just really, it seemed to fit. And then I like investigating things. I have, I don't know. I like questions that don't have answers yet.
Oh, it's the funnest.
Yeah, it's and speaking of agnosticism, like wondering about things that you may not. And psychology really afforded a lot of opportunity for that because we understand so little about
the human mind.
Right. Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah.
So So yeah, I did 2.5 years of biomedical research at the Health Science Center in San Antonio. I got a job as a research assistant for a guy named Jason Schillerstrom. He was a geriatric psychiatrist.
Okay.
And so I got hired on a National Institute of Health grant to be the study coordinator for a study on looking at the effects of chemotherapy on the brain over the course of a year in terms of like a neuropsychological battery of tests like memory, mood, working memory, problem solving, attention span.
So I'm assuming chemotherapy has negative impact on cognitive function, if that's what you want to call it.
Definitely, yeah, it can. But I did that. I worked for the Texas Alzheimer's Research Consortium out of the same office where we did, basically, I was a research assistant where I would be doing, these batteries of tests on different types of patients over the course of, different kind of treatment lengths.
Yeah.
So it was, interesting stuff. It wasn't really what I wanted to do, but I knew I needed to get some chops under some research chops, and I'm about to apply to these other programs. After a few years of that, I, thought this was the route I was going to go. Are we doing good over there?
Yeah, every now and then I just glance to make sure the indicator light's still working.
Okay,
and that it's still running. That's all I'm doing.
It's like we've been talking. Fine. It's like none of it recorded.
No, that's why I keep checking.
Yeah, that's good.
We're fine.
So you've done this before. That's clear. But I found a program at UC Irvine in Orange County with.
And how old are you now?
Let's see. So it was 2 years after I graduated college. So that was 18, 19. I was 21, I think.
And you had not, up to this point, been out of Texas. As far as living out of Texas. I'm sure you traveled. But.
Yeah, traveled. When I was in college, I studied abroad in Italy for 4 months.
That's awesome.
Yeah, did you ever hear about the Amanda Knox case?
Yeah.
So I lived in Perugia.
Was that the city that happened in?
Yeah, it happened in the city I was in when I was there. And my neighbor was Rudy Gade, the guy that did it.
Yeah.
He was my next door neighbor.
Me.
Yeah, no. He lived on Corso Garibaldi in Perugia.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Amanda's been on Rogan's. I've heard the whole story.
Yeah.
They also did the documentary about it on Netflix.
Yeah. That documentary was crazy. I mean, the prosecutor
that is insane that you know the guy.
Well, I mean, he didn't speak English.
I'm just saying he lived there next to you. That's weird. Jesus.
Yeah, so it was, me and two of my college buddies, my friends Katie and Joey, we studied abroad in Perugia. And we had a really normal abroad experience up to a certain point. All right. So the murder happened the night after Halloween on a night called All Souls Day.
Yes.
Right? So Perugia was such a small town that everything was within walking distance. Right.
Okay.
And the main economic drivers of the city were 3 international universities. Well, one was just for Italians, then there was the University of Pastonieri for foreigners, where you had to be essentially fluent or close to fluent in Italian to go there. And then there was a university for Americans, it was the Umbra Institute.
Okay.
And that's where we went. And so, normal abroad experience for a couple months. Halloween rolls around. We're all dressed up.
And then when Halloween rolled around, how long had you been there?
We got there, let's see, August, September. I think we were there early August, if I remember right.
Okay.
So a couple months of normalcy.
Yeah. So almost 3 months.
Yeah. So it was towards the end of the program because we left early December, so about a month and a half. This happened a month and a half before we left.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so we were in Perugia for Halloween, and I don't remember this because I'd had quite a bit of vino.
Of course.
But my buddy was dressed as Harry Potter, and again, since it was such a small town, it was just discotecas and bars and restaurants.
Yep.
All the international college students hung out with each other in the main piazzas, right? But yeah, my buddy was dressed as Harry Potter. And a British girl came up to him at one point in the night and wanted to take a picture. She's like, Harry Potter, I want to take a picture.
Yeah.
He takes a picture with her. It turned out to be Meredith Kircher, who was the girl that got murdered the next night.
I forgot she was British.
She was
right.
British. Yeah. So they actually went through his social media after it happened, and they called my buddy in for questioning twice. But we were actually in Venice the night that the murder happened.
Thank God.
Right?
Because the way that investigation went.
It was so...
They might have tried to peg him for it.
Right. I mean, it was really...
I mean, having been there, you might have even more insight. Or have you watched the documentary on Netflix?
I did.
Was it pretty informative and accurate?
It was informative. What's even more accurate is if you listen to Amanda's interview on Making Sense, the Sam Harris podcast.
Yes.
There was a lot of things I didn't know about it until I listened to that podcast.
Okay, I did listen to the whole Rogan episode, but I listened to Sam Harris too.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So, right on.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was wild. We were in Venice. There was a group of 8 of us that had gone to Venice on All Souls Day, and that's a whole nother story. We got lost, and then we couldn't find Venice is like a fucking maze.
Right.
At one point, we thought we were going to sleep on the ground, and someone that we had asked directions from earlier in the night drove by, and it was like 4 a.m. and saw us. We're like, you still haven't found your place? We're like, we don't know where the fuck we are. I was like, please help us. This woman in this little bitty, like, Skittle-looking car took us, like, 2 at a time back to this place we were staying. But anyways,
awesome.
So I get a call from this guy named Mauro, who's the IT guy at our university, and he was younger. He hung out with us a lot. And he was like, DJ, he was like, there was a murder in Perugia last night. We just want to warn you guys that it's going to be strange when you come home. Yeah, and he first said an American was killed. And we knew most of the Americans in town. We didn't know all of them, but we knew a good amount of them. So I got off the phone, and I was like, I remember telling everybody, like, there was a murder last night in Perugia. And everybody's like, what the fuck? And Perugia was called La Città di Pace, the city of peace.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't violent.
That shit doesn't
crime.
happen.
Doesn't happen. I mean, the only crimes that really happen on a regular basis, pickpocketing. And then, drugs, essentially.
Right.
It was a lot of college students, right?
Yeah.
Nothing violent, really. So this really was something.
An aberration.
So I remember we got back to Perugia. We get off the train, and the Carabinieri, the Italian police with those giant machine guns and stuff are everywhere. There's reporters everywhere already.
Yeah.
And since it was an American girl and a British girl that were involved in the story, BBC was there, and NBC and CBS and stuff, came to, Perugia, and, it was kind of funny because the reporters for, a lot of these places wanted to talk to a lot of the younger, the college students to see if we knew anything or anything.
Knew the victim or
victims
knew
or
the
anything
people
like
involved.
that. So we didn't know at all, right? Once we found out that it was, a British girl that had gotten killed and they were suspecting the American roommate, we didn't really know much because they both went to the University per Stranieri and we were going to the Umbra Institute. So we may have passed, ways, but we didn't really know each other.
Right.
But the reporters would be like, let me buy y'all drinks. We're like, all right, cool. We get drinks.
They
Like,
wanna
what do you
try-
know? We're like,
they
we don't
figure
fucking
if
know anything.
If they get you liquored up, they figure you'll talk.
Right, yeah. And I told them, I was like, I'll tell you everything I know, which is absolutely nothing. But,
But thanks for the drinks.
Thanks for the drinks. Right, exactly. So I remember I didn't tell my parents,
That would have just stressed them out.
Yeah, exactly. Even though it wasn't random, and it wasn't like there was somebody. Well, we didn't know at the time. But yeah, I didn't tell my parents, and the university called our parents. And I remember my mom called, and she was like, "There was a murder in Perugia. You didn't tell your mother."
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, yeah." So it was a strange abroad experience. And then having been there, she was really convicted in the court of public opinion initially, right?
Yes.
And we didn't know any better, so we all thought she had something to do with it too, because this is before I knew much about false confessions,
Right.
which is funny because when I went to UC Irvine to study, there was a memory lab that was doing research, on a similar topic on like false confessions. It was Beth Loftus's lab, and I didn't know much about it, and I just think I was like, how could you confess to something you didn't do? And then now knowing more about it, and especially hearing her side, where she was saying that they were treating her like she was a witness, and they were like, we know something, we know you've been traumatized, you can't remember, you just got to remember what happened.
Feeding her shit. And just long interviews, wearing her down.
Yeah, interviewing her in Italian without a translator a lot of times. It's just, I couldn't believe whenever I heard this stuff, I was like, how the fuck did this happen this way? And it really elucidates the fact that justice systems worldwide, even in America, are just run by persuading people, right? You know, it's like you may think that you can, I didn't do anything, I'm going to be fine. It's like if they have a good attorney that can convince people of something being a certain way, it's like
who's the best salesperson,
right? Essentially,
and that's why I've known this for a long time. I'm like, look, even if you're innocent,
just don't say anything.
Talk,
right?
Because
get a lawyer
the entire time, whether it's a prosecutor or police. If they're contacting you about an incident, from the start of the contact to the end, they are looking for PC.
They can lie to you.
Yeah, they can. It's not illegal.
It's not illegal, which is mind blowing.
Yeah.
And and it's it's nuanced in that like I fully feel that most police officers became police officers to do good in the
absolutely.
World, right? And so
it's the training and the indoctrination,
right?
And they're good people.
Yeah, I mean, I treat a lot of cops. They're some of my favorite patients. I love treating people that serve, like cops and firemen and police, or military people,
absolutely.
and things like that, because they're doing a job that I wouldn't do.
Oh, and God, I can imagine the sidebar, but the gear, the heavy belt and all the gear. Cops probably have a lot of back problems.
Oh, yeah, especially if they wear it all on the belt.
Because that's the worst place to wear it.
It's really hard on the hips.
You need to distribute more of the weight on the thighs, which are the strongest muscles.
And then I usually try and get them to wear a tack vest if I can.
Yes.
I let them know. I mean, they've studied it. They've looked at police officers, and just having that extra weight on the hips is really hard on their body. But anyway, back to Perugia. I remember walking home from class one day. I had my headphones in. I was just walking up Corso Garibaldi, and I remember I look up, and there was cops and all these people that were in like these white like hazmat-looking suits that said Polizia Scientifica on the back. They were going through my neighbor's apartment. And
Rudy,
yeah,
okay,
Rudy Goodday.
And how many was this? A week or two after the murder? How long did it take for this?
To be honest, I can't really remember. It was a while after. Okay. But I could be misremembering because everything kind of felt like it slowed down at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then there was another one of our friends who's an American bartender there named Nathan. I remember he was standing out there. I was like, "What the fuck's going on?" He's like, "They think Rudy did it." And I said, I didn't really know Rudy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the day after the murder, he went around telling people he was going to Milan to dance, and
Rudy was telling people.
Yeah, and so he fled. Right.
Yeah.
They caught him in Germany.
Yes.
Without a ticket on a train, extradited him back to Italy and pled guilty.
Jesus.
And then now he's trying to claim that it was Amanda again, that he was coerced and all this shit. And it's like, we know, like
it's over now.
Yeah. It's just she got reconvicted in absentia.
Yes.
So she can't go back to Italy. Not that she would want to go back to Italy.
Wait a minute. I thought at the end of the documentary they finally got it dismissed.
They did, and then
now
they reconvict her again.
Oh,
yeah, in absentia. Yeah, with her not there, they reconvict her. Yep. So she goes back, and we don't have an extradition treaty with Italy, so
she can't ever go there.
She can't go to Italy.
I mean, that's fine.
I wouldn't want
it's one
to.
place, but
yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. It was a weird abroad experience, that's for sure.
So you come back in December, and then when did you end up going to Irvine, UC Irvine?
Yeah, I went to Irvine. So, yeah, I got into the Jennifer Schemes lab, and she was one of the foremost experts in the country and from the academic sense on psychopathic personality disorder.
Okay.
And so that was going to be my field of study, namely like developmental precursors, kind of early signs in children of, maybe psychopathic traits.
Let's give a definition of what that means. Psychopathic, what disorder?
Well, I mean, there's actually some psychopathic personality disorder, right? So there's actually some conflict in the field as to whether or not we can conflate a test score on a certain battery of questions, the psychopathy index, with being a quote-unquote psychopath, right? So it's like, what's the difference between someone that scores 1 point below this arbitrary cutoff line and 1 point above? There's really not much of a difference, right?
Right.
And also with children, we don't want to label them as being psychopathic, right? Because that can put them down, a certain path, right?
Oh,
and
God, yes.
Right, so, but it's, there's constellation of traits. There's, fearless social dominance, impulsive antisociality, lack of empathy.
And I'm assuming it's, again, we're talking about the mind, so there's no definitive answers, but it can be genetic or it can be environmental, right?
Right. So that's actually getting into the research I was going to do. So they have these two variants of psychopathy. There's the primary variant, which is more of a genetically loaded type of variant, right? These kids seem to be born with something missing,
Right.
And then there's the secondary variant, which seem to be they have these these traits, but they seem to be a product more so of environmental input, like
Yeah.
abuse, like
Yes.
really
Whether it's
tragic
mental,
jobs.
physical,
Exactly. And so my research was looking at, or was going to look at, their differences in emotion recognition deficits. So they found that children that have the primary or signs of the primary variant have trouble identifying fear on other children's faces whenever they're
all that.
growing
They
up.
miss social cues.
In a way that's similar to like on the autism
Yes,
spectrum,
yeah.
and so they've found that can associate with a lot of maladaptive type of social behaviors, right? So if they found that these kids are looking at the mouth rather than the eyes to identify emotions in children's faces. And so that's
Oh.
problematic whenever you're a little kid, because if you can never identify fear in another child's face, you're never getting that social feedback to indicate that your behavior is
Oh my
inappropriate
God!
and you need to
Because
stop.
the fear is in the eyes.
Right, it's in the eyes.
Oh.
And so there was some research that showed with people that had emotion recognition deficits that if you just told them to look to the eyes when identifying emotion, they became more accurate at identifying the emotion and they became less aggressive over time.
Okay.
But nobody had studied that in children that had these signs of psychopathy.
Okay.
So that was going to be one aspect, one leg of my research. And then for the other types of kids that had the secondary, or like the secondary variant, they had an issue with identifying emotions where they would misattribute an ambiguous face showing no emotion as being threatening, because that became a defense mechanism for these children.
Oh.
Because they had to be on the lookout for the slightest sign of threat from whoever it was that was abusing them, right?
So even they're always on guard.
Always on guard.
So and if it was just a neutral face, that is too close to threatening.
Right. And so they would misattribute it. And they found this in a lot of people that have just overly aggressive, physical aggressive type of proclivities. And they found with a lot of adults that if they had a computer game where they would have faces that were, went on a spectrum from angry and threatening to ambiguous and neutral to happy. And so they would have this game where a face would pop up and they would have to click happy or angry, right?
Okay.
And so what they found was that they take a baseline and they found that the people would misattribute the ambiguous face as being threatening.
Okay.
But then they found that they could tweak the computer program so that whenever they'd answer threatening, they'd say, wrong, that's actually happy. And so it would retrain them.
Oh, it would give them feedback.
Right, exactly, to push it in a direction that they wanted.
Yeah.
Right? And so nobody had done that type of research on these type of kids. But then there were some ethical quandaries that I was thinking of, whether or not it would be a good idea, because that essentially is a defense mechanism, right? And would it be?
Oh, so you don't want to untrain a defense mechanism if it can help you out.
Right. But so there was some issues that would have
Jesus.
been, kind of sticky in that way had I gone down this route and done this type of research. And I really enjoyed the research I was doing before that. That would have been my doctoral thesis had I gotten that far. But I got 2.5 years into the 6-year program. I was teaching intro psych.
Do we need to pause and get a citronella candle out here? The bugs are bugging you? Or?
Oh no, there's one that's just.
Oh, I know. I keep watching it.
No,
Okay.
no, I'm good. It's just because.
But I can pause at any point. So.
No, we're good. So yeah, 2.5 years into the program, Jennifer Skeen, my advisor, she was like real hot shit in the field.
Okay.
She got offered a job to head up Berkeley's public policy research department.
Okay.
Which was a huge step up for her. So she took the job, and I couldn't blame her. But when me and the other 2 grad students in her lab, there was 2 other grad students that were older than me, or that were further along in the program than I was whenever I joined. We were like, okay, we heard that she got the job and she hadn't talked to us yet. And so we asked, okay, do we need to look? Because usually with PhD programs, you go with your advisor.
Yeah.
You're not going to a school to study, you're going to study in a certain lab with a certain professor.
Right.
And so I remember asking her, I was like, well, do I need to find a place in Berkeley to live for next semester? And she was like, well, you don't want your PhD in public policy, right? And I was like, well, no. She's like, well, then you have to stay in Irvine. I'm like, well, fuck.
Yeah.
I came out here to study with you. And, the only lab that had room for me was a lab that I was going to have to try and assimilate into. It was a lab that was researching something called affective forecasting, which is predicting how you're going to feel about an event before it happens, which we are really bad at, but we make a lot of big decisions in life thinking about how we think we're going to feel. So it's
when it actually happens.
Before it happens.
Oh, but I'm sorry,
right?
before it happens.
Right. And so we're really bad at that, but we make a lot of decisions that are big, even like, political decisions,
You're
life
projecting.
decisions, projecting essentially. And we're bad at it, right? And so, it's important research, but I remember getting into the lab and reading some of the seminal papers, and I was like falling asleep. Oh, this is so fucking boring.
This is not stimulating
I
me.
might kill myself before I finish this paper. And then, so I was like, oh, fuck, I don't know if I want to do this. I was like, I don't want to study this, but the teaching was keeping me in it. Like, I love the teaching, part of it. Like, for, like, my classical conditioning
I guess
day.
I should. I haven't. I went to college, but just undergraduate. So once you're in this position where you're working under, what was her name? When you're in this program, you are also not just working and doing studies and working with her. You're teaching classes.
You're teaching. Yeah, you're a TA.
So you're, okay.
I was a teacher's assistant. So I had my own sections, about 50 students or so at a time.
Okay.
For intro psych and social psych. And then over the summer, I did, I taught health psych. So I love that aspect of it. I liked connecting with the undergrad kids. I love the look on their face when I explained something using a metaphor, some different way of explaining it, and it like clicked.
Yeah.
And then they got it. That was like a really fun
instant
moment
reward
for me. Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. And my students liked me. They liked how I taught. I do like for our classical conditioning day, I'd hand out little solo cup thing with like some pixie stick sugar, in it. And everybody would get one when they walked in, and then when they'd sat down, it was like, okay, we're gonna do a conditioning experiment. And so I'd say, when I say the word Pavlov and raise my finger, I want you to lick your finger and get a little bit of pixie stick, sugar.
Okay.
And so I go Pavlov, and everybody would do it. I go Pavlov, and do it a number of times. This is something that my advisor did when we were in college, and it like blew my mind. And so I'd go
Can't
Pavlov,
wait to see where this is
do
going.
it like 5 or 6 times, and then I would just raise my finger and not say anything.
And they would do it.
And everybody would wait, and then I'd wait, and I'd say, how many of you are salivating? And they would all just go like, oh, holy shit. Oh. I was like,
God,
I just
yes.
conditioned the
You
class.
conditioned them.
And so moments like that and stuff like that like really kept me in it for a little while. I was like, you know what? I can maybe study something that is not so interesting as long as I get to teach.
Yeah.
But then looking at the job prospects, it's absolutely horrible, right? For professors getting into the field. And the reason I knew this is we had some openings at UC Irvine.
Mm-hmm.
The grad students were part of the interview process, and seeing some of the accolades and some of the applicants, I was like, holy fucking shit. It's like these people published a lot of stuff. They're really successful, and they weren't getting the job, right? And so it's like, and then one of the other teachers, told us that the modal, this is our nerd speak, the most common number of times that any given social psych paper that you write is cited by another paper is 0. So that means most of the papers that go out there.
Peter Attia talks about this all the time.
Exactly.
Yes,
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So I did have some publications before I got to UC Irvine, and I remember the first paper I got published took like 7 or 8 times, applying to different journals. It got accepted in some Slack journal online that nobody's ever going to read, never going to make a difference. And I worked on this shit for like, a long time.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what am I doing? Like I realized I was setting myself up for a lifetime of really unsatisfying homework.
Then on the personal side, did you like living? That's SoCal, right?
Yeah, SoCal,
Did you
Orange
like
County.
living there?
I loved it. I mean,
so if you could have got a position that you were happy with, you'd be happy living there.
Possibly. I mean, I will say it was a weird experience to get irritated with constant sunshine. Like I remember finding myself like, can I get a fucking cloud? Like just I was like, God, and because I like to couch potato from time to time.
So you're like,
and I was like, God, it's a beautiful day again. I was like, fuck,
I need a reason to sit on the couch and watch movies.
Exactly, or watch football. So I liked it. I loved living near LA, but not in it. I was big.
I know the LA, the SoCal area. So and I know where like Rancho Cucamonga and LA. Where is Irvine at?
Irvine's right south of Santa Ana. I believe it's.
Is that northwest up the coast?
No, it's inward. So Newport Beach is the closest beach to it. So it's just inland from Newport Beach.
Okay.
So it was about 40-something minute drive into LA, depending on traffic.
Right.
But I'm big into music, and so any big band I ever wanted to see was coming through LA at some point.
Go to the Whiskey A Go Go or what? I mean, there's so many venues there.
Yeah. Most of the venues we went to were in Hollywood. Like we went to like the Palladium quite a bit. This little underground place called the King. That was where we went to our bass heavy like womp shows.
Okay, like dubstep stuff.
Yeah,
was that a thing back then?
Yeah. See, I've been going to those type of those shows for a long time.
Okay.
Dubstep, a lot of like future funk stuff, like people like Grizz and like
I've heard that. I was a DJ for 15 years. But
nice.
I would mix in, but I was doing local bars, local dance clubs, and I would mix in some of this stuff, and I got kind of familiar with it. But I could scratch and mix a little bit, but I was never making my own beats.
Sure. Yeah, I hear you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm a big blues guy, and so I remember I saw BB King, the Tedeschi Trucks band open for BB King at the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah.
And that was a great set. And then I remember at one point at the end of the show, like it was like an encore, and the curtains go up, and there's BB sitting there with Susan Tedeschi and Derek Trucks, and there's an empty chair, and they're like, we have a special guest. And it was John Mayer, and a lot of people don't know that John Mayer shreds blues guitar. Like the dude is he's one of the best guitarists alive. You know, a lot of people don't realize that, and like he's even admits it. He's like, I played a bunch of pop shit so I can make money, and then I can make.
He went to the School of Music at Berkeley, which is their idea is to teach you how to be a pop music success.
Right.
But he's an amazing guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And then a lot of the festivals in Southern California were a lot of fun. Like Lightning in a Bottle was one of my favorites, and we went to Coachella, year after year. And
So you were enjoying. You could have been happy there, but you were looking around at your prospects of getting a teaching position.
Yeah, and also just there's a lot of problems in academia writ large. There was issues with publication biases. Like a lot of journals only want to publish quote unquote sexy results. That's not how science works.
Yes.
That became, I was like, this is not how it's supposed to be.
What year are we talking about now?
It's 2014, 2015.
We don't have to do a deep dive on this, but were you starting to notice this this cultural change in academia?
Oh yeah,
at
it was
the college
bad.
level?
It was bad, and I'm from Texas, and so I'm pretty politically moderate about a lot of stuff. My mom was a bleeding heart liberal, and I tend to lean left in a lot of ways, but
you're not crazy.
I'm not crazy. Well, and I heard there were some kind of crazy arguments made to me, and it wasn't from staff, but there was some. I remember there was a sociology student that I play blues, and so I was talking about how I play open mics. I was playing some open mics, and this guy told me that I was showing my oppressive class dominance by being a white man playing the blues. And that I couldn't possibly know what the blues is.
You owe an apology to every blues person that came before you.
Right, and then I was like, well, I'm Jewish, so technically we were killed for not being white, but that's a detail, right? And I was like, and also
a big detail,
right? And then I was like, I was like, well, I just was raised listening to Muddy Waters and B.B. King and Howlin' Wolf. This is the music that my parents listened to, and I just love this music, and it just was kind of shocking. And then,
by the way, I don't have to explain myself to you.
Right, exactly. And then it was also this person made the argument that Martin Luther King was a white supremacist because he advocated for colorblindness in society, or judging you by the content of your character instead of the color of your skin. I remember being like, what'd you say? It's like, can you say that again?
Can you say that sentence again? Because it makes no sense. It's
right?
very contradictory.
It's like you said, Martin Luther King is a white supremacist. He's like, well, he internalized white supremacy. And I was like, man, what the fuck are you learning out here? And I remember just thinking, I was like, and there was people agreeing with this person. I was like, am I crazy? He's like, is anybody else listening to this shit?
Right.
Not that those were reasons why I left, but I did see the underpinnings of some of the problems that have really
we're dealing with now.
We're dealing with now, right?
Yeah.
Especially especially for the Jewish people. I mean, you've seen some of the congressional hearings and things like that. They're just mind blowing. That's So I'm glad I left academia. I would say I went into psychology with this idealistic sense that I was going to discover things, change things, and help people in some way. And it felt so removed from what my end goal was because I want to have meaning in my life. I didn't want to just be I feel like it's really important. Something that a lot of people are missing nowadays is meaning. Yeah. And a true sense of this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. Right.
You're having an impact.
Right. Yeah. And so I had been a chiropractic patient, starting from whenever I was in high school.
Yeah.
And the way I got into chiropractic was kind of crazy because I played every sport that I could growing up. Mm-hmm. It was football, track, soccer, golf, baseball, everything. And I started having back problems when I was about 15. And, I'd gone to some MDs. And, I got a family MD, so I got nothing against allopathic medicine. I think that,
allopathic?
Western med,
okay.
Normal medicine.
Right.
I had nothing against it, but I remember we went to an MD and he prescribed me Vioxx, which was an anti-inflammatory. It was a newer anti-inflammatory at the time. I remember I took it twice and I felt really weird. I just didn't like how. No, my stomach was hurting and I just didn't feel good.
Okay.
And it didn't seem to help with the back pain. And I'm glad that I stopped. So I decided I didn't want to take it. I'm glad I stopped because it got recalled because it killed 50,000 people.
I knew I'd heard of that drug before.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, shit. Maybe I want to go a different route. And I know it wasn't an exercise thing because I was exercising so much playing all the sports I was doing.
Yeah.
So there's a chiropractor in my hometown named Dennis Bullock, and my mom took me and she was like, "You want to try this out?" I was like, "Sure." And after he adjusted my spine, I was like, I felt significantly better. Did a treatment course with him. All the pain went away. I took no time off from any of the sports I was playing.
Okay.
It kind of blew my mind. I was like, holy shit. I was like, this worked. And then I was good. I didn't do any treatment for a while. It came back, and then I went back. Same kind of process. This happened 3 times when I was, freshman, I think sophomore, and then like early senior year. And then when I went to college, I was running track in college. I was a sprinter and a long jumper and triple jumper. And it got to the point where I couldn't finish 100 meters because my back was killing me.
Oh, geez.
And so I went to the orthopedist that treats, the athletes from Trinity. And it's the same orthopedist that treats the San Antonio Spurs. So it was kind of cool seeing like Spurs gear everywhere.
Awesome.
I was like, oh shit, this is sweet. And this doc, he was a really great orthopedist. He was like, it's been bugging you a long time. I was like, yeah, off and on, 5 years or so. He was like, you ever get an X-ray? I was like, well, no, because it got better once I started doing, chiropractic. So it didn't. Because it got better pretty quickly, we didn't really see the need to X-ray. He's like, no, that makes sense. He's like, let's just shoot an X-ray just to see.
Yeah.
And his face when he came out, he's like, you want to know why this has been bugging you? I was like, that's why I'm here. And he put up the X-ray, and he was like, this is L5. He was like, you see these 3 lines right here? I was like, yeah. He's like, those are healed fractures. I was like, oh,
you had
shit.
fractured a vertebrae.
Yeah, and then he was like, you see this fuzzy area? He was like, that's an active fracture. He was like, you've broken your L5 vertebra at least 4 times.
Oh,
and
my God.
My jaw hit the floor. He's like, you didn't know. I was like, no. I was like, it didn't feel like you would think a broken back would feel like.
Did it heal and then build up scar tissue, or what happens?
No.
With the
So what
spine?
ended up happening, now that I understand what, more about chiropractic, I understand like what was going on. So essentially, my lumbar spine was not moving very much, except for L5 was moving a lot. And L5 was doing all of the burden of movement for that part of my spine. And since, I was an explosive athlete, a lot of explosive extension when you're sprinting and jumping and things, I had what's called a pars fracture. So you got the vertebral body right here, and then there's these 2 bones that come back and meet at a point in the back there. And so it broke like that, like it broke kind of downwards like that from that rapid extension. And so what was happening was the vertebra could do so much, and then it would just fracture from all the stress.
Oh, man.
And then when I was getting my spine adjusted, he was distributing the motion normally throughout my spine so that L5 didn't have to do so much.
Right.
The rest of the spine could do its job.
Okay.
That was sufficient enough to take enough forces off of that vertebrae to allow it to heal while I took no time off.
Jesus.
It kind of blew my mind. I was like, holy shit, it healed my own broken back without taking any time off, without taking any drugs or anything. I was like, that's fucking amazing.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and so, and being, I was a scientist at the time when I was thinking about changing careers, and so I was looking into chiropractic, and a lot of chiropractic is super pseudoscientific, culty shit.
That is so funny. I wasn't sure if I was going to ask the question, but I've heard Rogan's talked about it.
Yeah, he had a bad
theoretically the origin story of how
culty.
chiropractic came into, like, I don't know, a couple hundred years ago, whatever. Snake oil salesman.
Magnetic healing type shit.
Is that what it was?
Well, no. So there was a guy named D.D. Palmer that was like the founder, and he had some really strange beliefs. He thought that we were conduits of God, releasing the innate intelligence in the body to heal the body, and the only way that we do that is by adjusting the spine, and that all diseases can be cured through adjustments to the spine.
Okay.
So it's just a oversimplification of complex things in the body.
Yeah.
Right. And, and the irony is that you can think about the body's ability to heal itself as quote unquote innate intelligence.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it could be a vernacular type of thing, but him thinking that all diseases are due to this one thing and that we can fix it all if we just adjust the spine. That's just ridiculous.
Right.
But the way I think about it is that was the early thinkers. The methods were effective. The rationale was a little bit crazy.
Was flawed.
But, a lot of the main thinkers in cosmology used to think that the Earth was the center of the universe.
Yeah.
We don't completely discount all of cosmology just because of that, right?
Yeah.
We evolve our thinking.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of chiropractors nowadays are much more science-based. And when you look at the research, chiropractic is highly effective.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's, and they've done research on like how likely are you to get on opiates or get surgery or things like that. And it is not a question. It is highly effective for a lot of things. It's just the problem is a lot of chiros out there, still adhere to some of the more archaic types of thinking and think that all of Western medicine's an evil conspiracy and that you better not go to your doctor. Don't get vaccinated, get adjusted. Don't get your oncology medicine, get adjusted. And it's like, shut the fuck up.
Yes.
Like it drives me nuts because it's like we do good work, But whenever you got assholes like that, and they're usually the loudest, right?
Yeah, of course.
The people who are the craziest
The
on
vocal
the
minority.
fringes are the loudest.
Yeah.
And MDs look at that and they think that we're all like that,
Right.
And so it's frustrating. I hate sharing a title with a lot of chiropractors. And then, D.D. Palmer's son, B.J. Palmer, he was super sleazy. His main thing was like, advertise. Like he was very much he was a salesperson essentially. And, the echoes of that thinking is still present in a lot of chiropractic offices because a lot of chiropractors will shoot x-rays of you, which is fine to shoot x-rays, to see what's going on.
I feel like I have to eat since
go
she put
ahead.
it out here.
But they'll point to normal age-related change in your spine, normal degeneration, and be like, you see this? This is bad. They'll scare people. They'll be like, you better come in 3 days a week for 6 months straight. Oh, pip front.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's very used car salesman, right?
Yes.
And I hate that shit because, it's, people are coming to chiropractors in a vulnerable position looking for expertise. Mm-hmm. And this person's telling you, you're fucked up. I can fix you. You better come back a lot, right? And, I finish every one of my visits, unless somebody actually does have a broken bone or something that is majorly structurally problematic, I finish every visit by telling them, like, you are not broken. Like, we're going to, you're resilient. You just got a little, I do use the joke, you got to catch in your giddy up is what we say in Texas. And you can see this look on people's faces whenever you say that. And they're just like, holy shit, no medical professional has ever told me that I'm okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're fine, dude. Like, we just got to move some stuff. Your spine's not moving totally right just because we don't have to move to survive like we did whenever we were hunter-gatherers and stuff, right? And we're going to work on this together to get you better, and you're not broken. And, just telling people that and giving them a resilient mindset, they get better a hell of a lot faster.
Yeah.
'Cause people are resilient, right?
Yes.
The mind's in control of all of this, right?
And the mind has a big effect on how the physical part of the body.
Right.
Yeah.
And with, you mentioned Joe Rogan, his experience, it was a drag that he went to a chiro that wasn't if I'm treating somebody and they start to get worse based on what I'm doing, I change what I'm doing.
Right.
The guy that because I've heard him talk about it. The guy he went to was a chiro that still adhered to kind of some of the old thinking.
Okay.
And was like, let's just adjust the shit out of this over and over and over. And he's like, it's getting worse. It's like, just do it again. Crack. And he had a disc herniation, and it's you can't really say whether or not a chiro caused it. It's there's
right.
I mean, if you're over the age of 30 and you have no pain in your spine, you get on an MRI, you still got a 50-50 shot of having a bulge without knowing it, right?
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So it's like we don't know whether it was a chiro that caused it, but what we do know is that if the patient's telling you I'm getting worse after we do what we do, that chiro needs to change what they're doing or adjust different, be more gentle or something. And
it's
so
the definition of insanity.
Right. So he it's a bummer that he went to someone like that instead of someone who was a little more cautious and had bad experience, and then he puts out into the world that we're all fucking crazy. And so it sucks that I have to defend myself.
Yeah.
And there's MDs that think crazy shit. You know what I mean?
God,
but
yes.
we don't label all MDs as being.
And I've actually
groups,
heard him. He'll tell the story, but I've also heard him say, "Look, I think he tries to qualify it and say, look, there's probably a good aspect to chiropractic.
Yeah, definitely.
But he just obviously had a bad experience.
And I don't, I can't tell him any different.
Yeah.
But I really love what I do. I feel like I found what I was meant to do.
Yeah. So looking for go back to Irvine. Looking for how did you? At some point, you just said, "Hey, I'm going to do." You were talking about when you were a kid, the good experience you had with a chiropractor.
Yeah, had a good experience, and when I was in Irvine is when I met my ex-wife, and she was working in a chiropractic office at the time.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so I mentioned, I was like, I don't think I want to be a professor, and she was like, she knew how I felt about chiropractic, and I had been going to see her boss for a little bit. She's like, what about being a chiropractor? And I was like, you know what, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got into it, and then I realized it kind of hit all the check boxes for me. I was like, I wanted to help people. It had athleticism involved, right? The movements, the adjustments, there's a physical component to that. I didn't realize that was something I wanted, but after working in academia and being hunched behind the computer for so long, I was like, I really want to move my body for work.
Yeah.
And then seeing that Portland had a science-based program, I was like, shit. I was like, okay. And I was like, Portland looks like
the school up
University of Western States.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I applied and got in. And I was
That's
like,
how you ended up in the Portland
so I
area.
ended up in Portland. I fell in love with the Pacific Northwest.
And you
know.
hadn't been up here?
Never been up here ever.
Wow.
Not once.
Well, there's definitely some clouds every now and then.
I know, yeah. I mean, the greenery. I mean, the first hike we went on was Eagle Creek, and that was like before the fires.
Yeah.
And so I thought we were hiking through fucking Middle Earth. I'm like looking for Frodo. I was like, "Where's Sam?" And I was like, "This place is amazing," or like, rural China or something. I was like, "This is like, not that far from the city."
Right.
I was just blown away. I was like, "Jesus Christ, this place is fucking amazing." And and then the food was good, the beer was good. We lived on a farm actually in Camas, or a blueberry orchard in Camas, for the first couple weeks we were here, before we had a place to live in Portland.
Okay.
And we did this program called WOOFing, called Worldwide Opportunities for Organic Farming.
Okay.
And it's basically a database online of all these different farms all over the world, and you can pick a farm, look and see what they're looking for, and you basically go and you stay at the farm and you work for your rent. I mean, each farm has their own different, stipulations. But the one we went to would feed us, house us. We just had to do a certain number of hours of work per week.
Okay.
And the whole point of it is to learn about, farming, basically.
Like sustainable farming?
Sustainable farming, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so we lived on a blueberry orchard in Camas for a couple of weeks while I was looking for an apartment for us in Portland before I started school.
Oh, right
Moved
on.
up here about a month before I started school.
Okay.
And so, that was my first experience in Pacific Northwest. And I was like, man, this place is like heaven.
Yeah.
Like, the greenery up here. I'd never seen forests like this. Like, it's the most verdant, just incredible place. And then you go to the coast one day, you go to the mountains the next day.
Yeah. Hour and a half each way.
It's just crazy. And and then Jasmine, my current fiance, who I met in chiropractic school.
Okay.
She was in my cadaver dissection group.
She does the same thing.
She's a chiropractor. We work together.
Oh, at the same clinic.
Yeah,
okay.
she's in the office right next to me.
Right on.
Yeah, and it's kind of cheesy, and she like kind of I'm just like, we work together and we live together, and when we're apart we miss each other.
I was gonna say, aren't you guys sick of each other?
No, it's weird. I mean, the fact that we were friends for 5 years first.
Right.
I've never been with somebody who knows me more earnestly, and vice versa. When it comes to a relationship, I did not know I could be this happy. And I tend to be a giver when it comes to relationships. And in my past, I've had relationships where that temperament was kind of taken advantage of.
Okay.
Not on purpose by my the people that I was with, but just by their nature and my nature. I tended to put myself out to a point where it really caused problems for me. And it just But Jasmine's also a giver when it comes to a relationship, and so I've never been with somebody who also has that temperament.
Right.
And so it's just amazing. I mean, again, like the fact that we were friends for 5 years, we don't have any bullshit. Like there's no, like, I'm completely honest with her about everything.
Well, you knew each other really well. Before you started in a romantic relationship.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't regret any of my previous relationships. I was married. And I have my son. He's 7 years old, and he's wonderful. I mean,
he's awesome. Yeah.
He's still unemployed, but I mean, it's
fine.
fine.
Get him out there.
It's fine. It's like, get your shit together, kid. Kidding, buddy. I love you.
I don't think Buddy's ever going to listen to this. Well,
No,
maybe when he's an adult.
Maybe.
But that is the point of the podcast. Is when he becomes an adult, ready for it. I would love it. I want your extended family and your kids to be able to go back and, oh my God, that was Dad when he was this age. And, and hear you talk about your story. That's the point of this.
Yeah. No, I like it. Yeah. It's a good thing you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
How long was the program? The
it was 4 years, but I did it in three. If you didn't take summers off, you could graduate in 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So graduate in 3 years.
Happened to get like a part-time job while you're going to school?
No, just living on student loans.
Okay.
Yeah. So and then had a kid during school. So it was definitely tough, but Ame was able to stay home. And it worked out. But the way I think about my previous relationships is, I don't look back with any animosity. We just weren't right for each other. Each of my relationships. But I think I needed to go through each of those relationships and my marriage to learn the lessons I needed to learn to become the man I needed to be with Jasmine, to be in my current relationship. Because I needed to really learn a lot of the problems, in my previous relationships stemmed from me not really knowing myself, or at least admitting to myself what I needed out of a relationship. I've just always put myself to the side, and my father does the same thing. I'm very similar to him. Yeah. There was a doormat. I felt like a doormat sometimes because I just would, so I'm also super laid back. So if somebody says, I want this a certain way, if I don't give a fuck, I'm like, fine, you can have that way. But then whenever it's like, you better do it this way, then it got to be like, after years of it, it got to be, problematic.
No, but you are who you are now because of your experiences.
Exactly.
And
So
I kind of look at it that way too. I was three marriages again. I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't gone through all that stuff.
right. So I mean, it was valuable, necessary. I mean, I needed, growth is necessary. We can't stop growing, if we're gonna really self-actualize,
So pretty happy where you're at now.
I couldn't be happier. I didn't know I could be this happy.
That's awesome.
So it's good. And I actually just started therapy. I hadn't really felt a need for it, but a lot of stuff with the Israel-Hamas, conflict, and a lot of the responses of people here have been really hard.
Yeah.
Specifically, my little siblings, my half siblings, go to Jewish school in Houston.
Okay.
They've been getting bomb threats.
Oh Jesus.
There's protesters who scream.
Outside of a school?
They're not necessarily at the school, but they're nearby to the point where they have to pass by them to get to the school. My little sister's having nightmares. She's afraid for my father to drop her off at school because he looks Jewish.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things, and then seeing that the Harvard, Penn, and MIT congressional hearing,
Jesus, yeah.
to see the heads of our most revered sense-making institutions have the answer whenever the question was posed. Is calling for the genocide of Jews, does that constitute bullying or harassment based on your policies at Harvard? For them to say it's context specific.
Depends on the context.
Fucking, that blew my mind because it's like, so you're saying it's okay to call for the genocide of Jews in the right context.
Right.
And if you, and these are the same universities that that have in their student code, if you misgender somebody, that's hate speech, and that's
right.
Reprehensible. But it's like these kids are leaving a microaggression seminar to go to a Gas the Jews rally, and it's fine.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, like, seeing that and really feeling, and having been left-leaning most of my life, seeing that from very clear, and then seeing the people that are protesting, and regardless of what you think about what's going on with the conflict, your heart can break from multiple things at once, right?
Of course.
And so these people are doing it. These protesters and stuff it's coming from a good place, but their lack of understanding of the history of the region, the complexities and the nuance, and their lack of understanding of what actually happened on October 7th, really leads to them, acting in a way that just it's just insane. Like to be blaming Jews in America for what has happened in Israel, and they can say that they're not, but they are. When they scream things like "by any means necessary," it's like, what does that mean?
Yes.
From the river to the sea, do they know what that means? They don't even know what fucking river and what sea. And that's some of the things that's so frustrating. It's like you don't know what you're saying, right? They're classifying the entire world as oppressed and oppressor, and that's the only way they can define anything. And it's based on this kind of postmodern slant from people, the French postmodernists in the 80s, like Jacques Derrida and Michel Foucault, even Judith Butler, and those types. It's an oversimplification of very nuanced things.
Oh, of course.
And and like I've been having feelings like I don't want to wear a Star of David in Portland. So,
I get it.
Those are feelings that I have never had in America
you shouldn't
before.
You shouldn't have that fear.
Shouldn't have the fear. And and again, like these people say, we're protesting Israel, not Jews. It's like, yes, but you are doing it in a way that is threatening to all Jews.
Yeah.
And it really, and seeing it largely coming from the left, that's what made it hurt more, because it's like, God damn it, guys. It's like, we're
supposed to be the progressive party.
Right. And it's like, and they're having very regressive type of thinking.
Yeah.
And so it's, I just needed, and also, like with what happened on October 7th and some of the imagery, reading some of the survivor stories, especially from like that. I go to a lot of music festivals, hearing the survivor stories from those people at the Nova Music Festival, and I don't know, I don't want to get too dark or anything, but just, some of the things that happen, I can't get some of the images out of my head. And so I've decided I was going to go to therapy, and, I've had a session and immediately felt a lot better.
Oh God.
And I found a Jewish therapist because I was, I didn't want to spend a number of sessions explaining what Judaism means to me and like how I'm not religiously Jewish, but I am ethnically Jewish, and yada yada.
Yeah.
So got a really good connection with one of the therapists in Vancouver, and really that's the other than that small little thing in my life, like I'm so grateful. I'm so happy with what I have here.
Yeah.
Because I really am not. I got a woman that's the love of my life that I live with and work with, and that we're gonna buy this business together, and we're gonna live our lives together. We want to start a family. she's a great stepmother, and I can't wait to see her be a mom to our
Yes.
kids.
Yeah.
You know, I'm making good money. I'm doing something that I find meaning in. I feel my soul feels fulfilled with
Yeah.
what I do on a daily basis. I live in the most incredible part of the country that I can imagine. So you know, I really try to be grateful, and I am grateful in a way that I feel like, you know, it helps to make me cognizant of just how damn lucky I am and how happy, you know, I truly am on the inside, right? So,
And it is a good feeling and mentally healthy to be grateful,
right?
to have a life that you can be grateful for.
Yeah,
There's a lot of people don't, unfortunately.
yeah, having gratitude is huge. I mean, because, you know, and especially doing what I do, I see a lot of people that are in some physical, even just physically. Not, I mean, and also, I mean, you know, obviously, you know, I'm talking to these people, I'm getting to know people. I can
Right.
sense when they've had emotional, psychological distress, things like that. You know, so to see how it could be versus what I have, like, you know,
Yeah.
that really highlights the, you know, things that really make me cognizant of how grateful, you know, I truly am. And it is a sense of gratitude that is just, you know, it's immense, man. Sometimes I like have to pinch myself, to be honest.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a really good thing.
It's really good.
And I'm into therapy. I have been I've been on it for over 8 years. I have a personal one I work with, and then me and Pam have our couples therapist that we've been seeing for a year and a half, maybe.
Mhm.
My personal therapist, I've been seeing her for like 7 or 8 years.
That's great, man.
She's awesome. Yeah, it is. It's you don't even know, you don't realize, and it's a process. It's not going to happen in the first few sessions,
course.
but there are things I can say and talk about to the therapist you can't talk. Even your closest friends or family, sometimes it's not easy to share feelings and things that are going on with them, or not even with them. I'm sorry, with yourself, but
To them.
yeah, it's
Right.
just easier
Right.
sometimes. Like I do some sessions with my daughter. My daughter's 32 years old. I do some sessions with my personal therapist. We'll get on Zoom and do them together. And we've had some of the best conversations ever in therapy. And we are very close and can always talk about anything with each other, and we always have.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something about the format of the therapy
Right.
session that sometimes makes it easier to bring up what might be some hard points to talk about,
course.
you know, or areas of where we're butting heads, because we're both. She's way too much like me. We both think
Yeah.
we're right about everything,
Yeah, that can be troublesome sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
and usually we're on the same page. But obviously, me being I had her when I was 19.
Oh wow.
So there is a me being 20, almost 20 years older than her, and having life experiences she hasn't quite had yet. And you probably have already had some moments like this with Bodhi, but obviously it'll happen more when you see them doing things. Mainly when they become adults, you see them maybe going down paths that you went down. But it's one of those things where they have to learn the lesson themselves to watch. But
It's really hard to watch, you
yeah.
know, but
I mean, if they're not,
do you want to get another beer?
yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
All right.
Just
All
grab
right.
whatever, and I'll pause it real
All
quick.
right, cool. This is fun. Awesome. Yeah. All right.
Back on.
All right.
Ouch.
Sorry, I
Oh.
needed to re-beer.
Yeah, we had to reload or refill, as it were.
That's right. Yeah. No, man. I mean, it's clear you're doing this for the right reasons, you know, because, you know, it's everybody wants a podcast for after they see how much money, you know, certain people make and what sort of
Oh my
influence,
God.
and it's like, you know, if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, it's very clear.
Yeah, and obviously, I would love it if it could become a revenue source.
I mean, that'd
but
be
I don't
awesome.
care if it does.
Right. Yeah.
But I just want to put it out there, and it'll find an audience.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But again, that's why I save everything. And any of the guests that want me to, I'll throw a copy on a thumb drive. They put it on their laptop, and then they can share it with their family. You know?
Yeah. I like it, man.
You know, my dad just passed away New Year's Eve.
Oh shit, I'm sorry. to
And
hear that,
I
man.
was lucky enough almost a year before to be able to go back to Tennessee. And
Is that where you're from?
He's from. No,
Okay.
no, I'm from California,
Oh,
but
that's
then
right, you
the
mentioned
Canby
that.
area.
That's right.
But he's from Tennessee. I was able to record a little over a half an hour. He was living in assisted living, but I was able to record about a little over 30 minutes with him. Oh my gosh. So like on the flight back when he passed, I was trying to get back there before he passed, but I couldn't. But on the flight back, I was able to just go back. And so now that I have that, if I ever want to hang out with my dad, I can just watch the podcast. You know, it's
That's
really
great,
it's
man.
really cool.
That's
So,
great, man.
yeah, that's kind of the point of it.
Well, that's good, man. Yeah.
Now, where's Jasmine from?
Jasmine's from Massachusetts. Technically,
Oh, I think I knew that. The
yeah,
Patriot
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, that's right.
remember.
You don't have your jersey on, bro. I know it's not football
no,
season.
It's Kenny Chesney, which
I see
he's
that.
connected to Gillette Stadium too. In fact, I haven't done it yet. I don't think I did at the beginning. Every episode I have to do it. It's a running joke. Tom Brady rules. Kenny Chesney. All hail No Shoes Nation. The backstory I've told on every episode, I think, is I helped my daughter start her podcast, and I would do that on. I was a guest several episodes in the beginning, and I would always do those shout outs, and she would edit it out.
Yeah.
So now
There
I'm
you
like,
go.
it's my podcast.
There you go.
It's going to be on every episode.
Yeah. Well, I'll say go Cowboys, but
Cowboys are, that's cool.
yeah, but they're trying to kill me. Jerry Jones is a fuck. I mean, the guy. I mean, free agency just happened. We need a running back.
I haven't seen. Have they made moves? I haven't.
No, that's the problem. Is
Oh.
they were saying we're gonna go all out this year because we lost in horribly embarrassing fashion.
Yes.
And,
Do you want them to keep Dak?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I feel like Dak is better than a lot of quarterbacks in the league.
Absolutely.
Right? And so
Yeah.
now, because we know what he is, I think it's good that we have that set.
Because you can
now,
build
I think
around that.
Right. Now I think he needs a pay cut. He's going to end up being the most highest paid quarterback in
mediocre
history.
quarterback,
You know,
but
when
he's not mediocre. He's
not
better
really-
than
I mean,
that.
when he's playing well, he's
Yeah.
easily
Top
one of the
10?
I'd say top 5 when
Yeah.
when he's playing well.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw what happened this last year. Once he started cooking,
Mhm.
I mean, he had the Cowboys were averaging like 37 points.
Yeah,
a game.
I didn't see that because they got in the playoffs.
Yeah, and
but lost in
to
the first.
fucking Packers.
Right, and I didn't see that coming because they were on a hot streak.
Well, to be honest, and also they hadn't lost at home, and they were playing at home.
Right.
So I mean, but to be honest, as a Cowboys fan, since since I was, born essentially.
So the Aikman era.
Yeah, I mean the
were
90s.
you old enough to remember that?
Oh yeah, dude.
Okay.
The '90s, being a Cowboys and a Spurs fan, the '90s ruined me for sports
because you
fandom because
had-
I was
you
used
had
to dominant
You had
championships.
Robinson and Duncan.
Oh yeah, we had the Twin Towers. We had Manu and Tony Parker. We had multiple
Yes.
championships. The Cowboys
and the
were
Cowboys,
killing it.
3 Super Bowls in the 90s.
Should have had
Aikman.
more. Had Jerry
Yes.
Jones not run Jimmy Johnson
Yes,
out of town.
yes.
So I haven't forgiven Jerry Jones since that. But then decisions he's made subsequently have been just absolute. I call it character building. Being a Cowboys fan, right?
That's a good way to
it's
put a
very,
spin on it.
right? So and the Green Bay loss didn't hurt as bad as some might think because I expected us to choke at some point during the playoffs.
Right.
I just didn't think it would be game 1 at home
Right.
against Jordan Love, right? And so then
you say it like
they're
that.
saying, yeah, exactly. And then they're like, we're going all out in the offseason. We're going to make some signings, blah, blah. We need a running back. Tony Pollard is not an every down back.
Yeah.
And Saquon Barkley's available. Joe Mixon's available. Fucking Derrick Henry's available. There's all these good running backs available. Saquon goes to the Eagles, which is kills me.
Right.
And then Derrick Henry, we all had our hearts set on Derrick Henry, and it was looking like he has a connection with Texas. We were all like, okay.
Is that where you went to high school?
No.
No.
I can't remember where he went to high school, but I think he has a home near Dallas.
Okay.
And I think, I could be mistaken. But anyways, Derrick Henry was looking like he was going to be the move. And then the Cowboys said, Derrick Henry was a little too expensive for us. Turns out they never even fucking called him. He got signed. He went to
Wow.
Baltimore. And, Baltimore is just going to be nasty this year.
Yeah.
We lost Tyron Smith, our all-universe left tackle. He went to the Jets.
Yep.
He's going to go protect Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, Jesus.
No,
wait. Aaron's running for vice president. So
I
is he
know.
gonna
It's
play
like
next year?
right? Yeah, right. It's like, God damn. Bro, play football, It's just, I mean, he's already caught so much shit just from saying, like, things that aren't even, like, crazy political, but just saying his opinions. But the way that the media is nowadays, it's like, just let the guy have some fucking opinions. Who gives a fuck? He's a football
Right.
player. If you're getting your health advice about, like, vaccines and shit like that
Yeah.
from Aaron Rodgers, you got problems. Like, it's like the whole Rogan thing. Like, he always gets a bunch of shit. And it's like, why are you listening to a comedian and a podcaster for, for health and political stuff? It's like, what do you give a fuck what this guy says?
And the foundation of the country is you can make the argument that if we're going to have free speech, all speech has to be free.
All speech has to be free,
Yeah.
even speech that we hate.
Because I was going to say the only way it works is you have to shine the light on the cockroaches or
Right.
the bad info or the bad opinions.
That's right.
Let them talk because the truth will come out.
Right. You have to win arguments and not just, you have to have rationality. And that's what, like, kills me about, like, I feel politically, if we're getting into politics, I feel politically homeless right now. Because, like,
Yeah, me too.
I was left-leaning for a long time. I could see some of the shit, like, after, like, I told you about the UC Irvine incidents where I was like, wait, and this is a very left-leaning person. I was like,
Mhm.
you like some of the rationality was just crazy. And then I had someone tell me that like punctuality was white supremacy and like math is white. It's like, are you guys like? They're saying different cultures have different senses of time, so to expect certain cultures to be on time. I was like,
that
wait,
right there is racist.
It's crazy. That's what I was gonna say. I was like, you're telling people, it's like you're telling black people, it's like, this being on time thing, not for your people. It's like that's the most condescending, racist shit I've ever heard. And it's funny because like when I was at UC Irvine, there was one of my classmates he was a black guy and he was a scientist, and as we all were, and some of the postmodern slant is that Enlightenment principles, as in rationality, objectivity, science itself, are vestiges of white supremacy and therefore are an ineffective way to ascertain what is true or not, like of epistemology. And I remember my buddy was like, "This is some shit." He was like, "They're telling me this science and rationality thing." Not for your people. And he was like, that's some condescending bullshit.
That is so insulting.
He was like, I'm a black scientist. I can be on time. I can be rational. It's like, it's some condescending bullshit. And then like being from Texas, I know, I grew up with a lot of Hispanic people.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to one of my buddies and the whole Latinx thing, he was like, what is this shit? He was like,
what is it?
He was like, you're telling me the white people need to fix our language for us? He was like, that's the most racist shit I've ever heard in my life. He was like, we're doing fine, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just, it's crazy because it's like, all this can come from a good place, but this idea that, everything can be defined by oppressed and oppressor, that everything is in-group, out-group. Mm-hmm. Everything is either, if you don't adhere to the orthodoxy, you're evil.
Right.
There's no nuance to anything. If you disagree with this, you're a bigot or something like that. It's like, that is not persuasive, right?
No.
And I feel like, the progressive left has forgotten that politics is essentially a persuasion game. Like if you actually want to, enact change in our world, you have to have good arguments and you have to be persuasive.
Yeah.
Saying because you were born in this way, you got white skin, you're a piece of shit and you're guilty of all the things that anyone who ever looked like you has ever done. Mm-hmm. Bend the knee, vote for us.
Right.
It's like, what the fuck are you doing? And then you get the right wing and it's like, it's been captured by this pathologically lying total piece of shit asshole Donald Trump.
Yes.
And it's like, they're looking at like it's, they don't give a fuck about, law. They claim to be law and order, yet they're totally fine with this guy like trying to influence, election results by calling like the Secretary of State in Georgia to be like, find me these votes. It's like, how is that law and order? It's like, like if the founding fathers could come back and see how these political parties are and like look at like the Trumpian right and the progressive left and be like, y'all are fucking this up. Like, you're anti-free speech, and that's coming a little bit more from the left. But then, and the right wing, like, I have patients that are a little bit more right wing that are telling me that like Jewish space lasers caused the fires in California. And it's like, oh my God, y'all
and
all fucking
Tom
crazy.
Hanks is
a pedophile or whatever.
Well, or he's not even Tom Hanks. He's been replaced by a robot or something.
Yeah,
and
like the craziest shit you've ever heard in your life.
They're eating children in the basement of a pizza place or something.
Yeah, like Hillary Clinton and Houman Abedin are, scaring children to get adrenochrome. It's like, God damn it, and it's like this is the best that we got is these two fucking
I had that
assholes,
thought. That was, I feel like we can do better, and I kind of blame both parties. I'm like,
really big time.
Is this... And that's why thank God nobody watches my podcast at least now, but I didn't vote for either of them. I voted for Tulsi Gabbard because I'm like, I resent the Democrats for forcing us into that decision.
Right.
I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
Right.
That's the best and brightest that you could put forward.
Right. And then, the fact that they put forth these arguments that don't make sense, that pushes people to the right.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, because it's like, if you're telling me I'm a piece of shit because I don't agree with everything you're saying, hook, line, and sinker, I don't think that merit is bad, because, I mean, as we found, whenever you're anti-meritocratic, groups that are groups that have merit, that do well in society, those are looked at. You only got to where you are because you oppressed somebody.
And you have a privilege.
And you have a privilege, right?
Yes,
and it's like, and they oversimplify shit to the point where it's like, if you're looking at the most successful groups in America, Asian Americans are number one in terms of success when it comes to finances and, and education and things like that. Indian Americans from India are, that is also a very successful group. Mm-hmm. Groups from the West Indies like Jamaica, specifically Jamaica and, some of those countries there, in that region do very well. Jewish people writ large do very well. And it's like, is it because we're privileged? Is there Jamaican privilege?
It's 'cause
You know,
you
is
put the
there
work
Asian
in.
privilege? You know what I mean?
You
Right?
put the
Yeah,
work
there
in.
are other factors involved with your success in life other than your skin color. And
Yes.
it's like, whenever they put forth these arguments, it's like, well, fuck, where do I go now? Because you guys are definitely not. You're not kind of. You don't look at my successes as being anything but as a result of my skin color
And your privilege, right?
and my
it
privilege.
It's not like you earned
Had
it.
nothing to do with it. Being the only Jew in a small town in Texas wasn't always easy. It was
Yeah,
my
I'm
sister.
sure.
I was 50% of the population, the Jewish population in my hometown, and my sister was the other 50%.
Oh my God.
You know, and like people would, I get zigged high in the hallways sometimes, and
Oh Jesus.
part of it was that the South Park had started to become big whenever I was coming up,
Okay.
and so that humor was starting to become big, and
Yeah.
Cartman humor essentially.
Yes.
And so it was always from like football buddies and stuff where like I knew they didn't have true animosity towards me.
Right.
But there was times where if they'd call me Kikenstein, there was times where I'm like, and my answer to any of their jokes would be like, "You're gonna work for me one day." Like,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah,
I
so
love
that
that
would be
comeback.
that would be
So
my,
they didn't have ill intent.
no ill intent.
But they couldn't relate to how that affects you.
Right. It was still
Yeah.
othering in
Yes.
a way, right?
Yes.
Where I didn't feel threatened, I didn't feel like but I knew I was different,
Yeah.
To act like anyone's successes are only resultant of their privileges or their skin color is just crazy to me. That's just and not to say that we can't admit that there are differences in how people navigate society.
Yeah.
But to oversimplify very complex things into it's just your skin color, nothing else can be explaining it. It's just your identity group. Like it's antithetical to everything everything that has been built here, right?
Yeah.
What has been built here is a place where if you make the right decisions, you will be rewarded for those decisions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And that should be a good thing. It's motivating.
It's a good thing. It's motivating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, the progressive left will really, their aim, the whole equity thing is, trying to equalize outcomes in the natural world is impossible unless you are authoritarian, right?
Right.
You just can't do it.
No.
You cannot. There are so many factors involved that dictate whether or not someone's successful. If you have value for anything in society, there will always be a hierarchy of who is better at it, who's been who's put in more work, who's made the right choices, right?
Yeah.
And for them to think that any success must be a function of you're oppressing others or exploiting others is number one, it's just not true. Number two, it's just not a functional way to interpret reality, interpret society. It's like you will not succeed in life. We will destroy this thing that we got going on here if that's the way that you think.
Yeah.
And it feeds people towards this other end of the political spectrum that's fucking crazy, in my opinion.
That's the problem is both sides are so extreme. And also there's this thing, and it has to have a lot to do with social media. We don't have to go too long on this political rant, but it's important stuff. Is everybody has become so married to their ideas and beliefs.
Right.
It's like they look at it as their personal identity. So if anybody just wants to discuss it from a different perspective or challenge their assertions, they take it as a personal attack instead of just saying, "Hey, I have this outlook. Let's talk about it. Maybe I'll learn something from you. Maybe you'll learn something from me." Because I love being proved wrong.
Me too.
That means I have become a better person.
Right. Yeah. And I love speaking to people with whom I disagree because only two things can happen. You either sharpen your own thinking and be like, okay, I've really thought about his or her mindset and it's like, this is why I think that I'm correct. Or if they make a compelling argument, you change your fucking mind.
And that's growth.
That's a great thing.
Yes.
And it's not threatening. But you're right. Whenever you wrap identity up into your belief systems, that means anyone disagrees with you is disagreeing with you as your identity, you as a person.
They look at it as you're saying I'm a bad person.
It's like no. I'm just saying I don't see it that way, and let's
let's
okay.
talk about it.
Let's talk about it a little bit.
That's how we progress.
Right, exactly. We want to be progressive. That's how you progress. Right.
I didn't even realize I slipped that word in there, but that's what it was supposed to be.
And all that being said, I do think that most people have a very good that most people have good intentions. There's obviously some people who do not, right?
Yeah.
I think that just there's a lot of misguidance in how to think, right?
And we're losing critical thinking.
Right. Yeah,
Most
we're being
people,
taught what to think, not
most
how to
people
think.
don't know how to do that. Well, although you know what, I'm sorry, a lot of people probably do, but the people with the loudest megaphones are the extremists. They're the minority.
Right.
I think the vast majority of humans on the planet probably think like we do.
Right. Yeah.
But they aren't. They're out there doing jobs and trying to better themselves. They don't have time to sit in their parents' basement and post stuff.
Right. Yeah. And that's where the problem in academia comes in, is because they're not in the real world, right?
Yeah.
They're reading these esoteric theoretical things.
Yeah.
And they're thinking to themselves like, okay, this is what I want to be true. This is right?
right.
And so how can I relay this to the students in a way where they're...
I'm going to find, I'm going to look for evidence that supports the conclusion I already made.
Confirmation biases, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's funny. My 7-year-old Bodie knows what confirmation bias is, right?
Because I see him do it all the time. No, I'm kidding.
Right? Yeah, no kidding. He's using it every fucking day, little shit. No. We've talked about it, like, if, and I will never, disparage his mother in any way or anything like that. But if she tells him something's a certain way, and I don't think that it's that way, we talk about the fact that, whenever we want something to be true or we think something is true, we expect something to be true, which we all do. And I let him know. I was like, we all do this.
Oh, absolutely.
I was like, we look at like these websites that have this information that confirms it. We're like, yes, I'm right. But we ignore all of these websites, all of this information that shows that that's not the whole story. I was like, don't we want to have all of the information, right?
Let's gather all the facts and then make an informed decision. And it is so hard in this, especially with social media, it's so hard to find reliable, objective sources of facts.
It really is.
It's so hard to find it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like, it's sometimes I wish that I was I don't truly wish that I was less critical, but like having been a scientist for years and recognizing how little we do understand, and having literacy in being able to read a scientific paper and, take from it, because that's all I did for years was read, write, and critique science.
Yeah.
And so, like, whenever I hear the media say something is true, there's a new study out of this that says blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, interesting. I'll go look at the study, and I go look at the study. And I'm like, holy shit, that is not what this says.
That's not what they said
at all. Or they cherry picked a certain aspect of it. And really in the COVID days, that was, there were some things that, like, that the institutions told us were a certain way. And I went into COVID with a full trust in a lot of the institutions and thinking, that they were being honest with us in a lot of ways. And they were. And a lot of times they were doing the best they could because it was an unknown situation, right? And
it was an unprecedented event.
It was an unprecedented event that we, in terms of the modern era.
Right.
So, I don't, blame them for getting certain things wrong. But, there was times where they would say something was true based on a certain research study, and then I'd go look at the study, and it was clear they didn't expect anyone to actually go look at it, right? And it was really disheartening because I was like, well, fuck, now I have to check on everything you guys tell me because you either intentionally or not misrepresented a study in a way to fit a certain type of narrative. Yeah. And that was really hard because it's like, God damn it. It's like, just tell us the truth. And then we're adults. We can make our own conclusions. And don't treat us like children.
It was almost like there was a lot of, we can't trust people to make informed decisions if we give them all the information. Right. So we have to feed the information and I'm sure I'd like to think that it was coming from a good place.
Right.
But we have to give them the information that will lead them to make the choice we think is best instead of just giving them all the info.
Right. Well, I think it was coming from a good place. I think there was a lot of things at play there. I mean, it was during the Trump administration, so a lot of people that were in the institutions and sort of, more on the left-leaning side of things felt like they had to overcompensate because, the administration said nothing's going on. There's no problems. Nothing's, you know what I mean?
So there's been a lot of negative and positive about Fauci, but I still remember when it first happened, Trump was in office. It was almost daily press briefings that Trump would give from the office, and Fauci's off to the side. Trump gets up there and starts saying a bunch of stupid shit, and I remember seeing Fauci just going,
Jesus fucking Christ.
Would you stop talking?
Right. So, I mean, I can understand why the pendulum would swing so far in the other direction because they felt like it had to. And, like, to be honest, if I were Fauci or I was someone in their position, I don't know if I would have done different. I would have thought, I think I would have. But, like, I don't know what their mindset was in a way where, like, they're like, well, fuck. if the people who are running the country think this, and that we know that this is a reckless way of thinking, like nothing's going on, there's no problems whatsoever, they're like, well, we now it's like we may need to tell everyone, it's the worst thing ever, everybody's dying. It's like,
Right.
it's really, you know what I mean? Like it's just a human nature type of thing. But like where I got really irritated, and some of the things that I like, going back to like reading the research and being kind of shocked at what it actually said. I remember Rochelle Walensky, who's the head of the CDC.
Currently or at the time?
Definitely at the time.
Okay.
Maybe currently, so
Okay.
I'm not really sure.
Okay.
But she, it was about masking kids in schools.
Right.
And, and I didn't really have much of an opinion on it. I was like, it was not a big, I got a little annoyed when people would be like, this is oppression, blah, blah. It's like, it's inconvenience. It's not oppression.
Exactly.
Let's not confuse oppression with inconvenience. You're
when
putting a piece of cloth over your
when it
mouth,
first
like, quit being a
started,
whiny bitch.
You can imagine how many at my job, how many people would start fights because at first you had to wear it to come in the store.
Like,
how many memberships our general manager had to cancel because people would come in and cause a scene.
It's just crazy because it's like, dude, like you have to wear it for a couple minutes when you're in a store. Like, be a fucking grown up and like just chill out. Like, it's fine. It's not a big deal.
And this has always bothered me, but people don't understand the difference between public property and private property that's open to the public.
Right.
So even though we're a store that's open to members, or even a grocery store that's open to everybody, we still can set rules on how you conduct yourself, because it is still private property.
Right?
That would be like me coming into your home and saying I'm going to hang out and watch the football game without your permission.
Right. Yeah.
But people don't make that connection. They think freedom. I'm an American.
My freedoms, and it's like, God damn it! Like, it was frustrating because everyone was acting like adult children at a certain point.
Yeah.
But
we don't have to go too far down this road if you don't want to talk about it. But I would, because you're in scientific background in the medical field. What was or do you have an opinion? Maybe you might know some more stuff than I do. The whole race to get the vaccine out. They lifted all of the requirements and just said, and gave them protection from any liability, and said, you can put these vaccines out no matter what happens, you're not liable. Was it a big pharma conspiracy, and was it all about a money grab for them?
I think that was it Churchill that said, never let a good crisis go to waste. So I think it could be both. It can be they saw an opportunity to make a lot of money, but also they saw an opportunity that we were in a situation where we needed to do something, right? And so and science is imperfect, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Medicine is imperfect,
yes.
right? And so whenever you are creating medicines like this, there is no medicine that's okay for everybody to take.
Absolutely.
But writ large, like, we needed to do something, right? Because there was there was a lot of people dying. My father works in hospitals. Some of the stories he was telling me about what was happening in the hospitals was crazy.
So then let's maybe clarify by saying this. This was not just another flu or common cold.
No.
This was more dangerous.
This was killing people.
This was more dangerous than that.
This was much more
because
dangerous
that was the arguments I would always see, is people would put up, well, you know how many people died from the flu last year? It's less than COVID. It's just not true.
Not true. No. It was
a novel virus.
It was a novel. I mean, well, not necessarily novel in that we had coronaviruses.
Right.
But what was novel about it was that there was characteristics that were present in this virus that we haven't seen in a lot of ways. And I'm not a virology expert. I don't know things completely to its fullest extent. But from what I understand, there were some things with the genetics of the virus and with like cleaving sites and certain aspects of it that made it different, and kind of pointed towards it not necessarily maybe coming from nature, possibly being
a lab leak.
A lab leak, right?
Right.
And the fact
gain of function research,
right? And the fact that you couldn't even talk about that without being labeled a certain thing is just
That's
crazy.
insane.
It's just crazy. It's like
Yes.
no, it's like we can talk about like where something might have come from.
Absolutely.
Right. But I think we were in a situation where there was we were trying to keep our medical system from completely cratering,
imploding,
yeah. Right? So they had to do something, right? And in a situation like that where they have to do something rather quickly and they're having to, create like a vaccine or something like that, it's understandable that, there will be people harmed, but then again, people were already being harmed, right? And so like I understand why they're like, okay, we need y'all to make something, and they're like, well, why would we do that if people were going to sue us? You know what I mean? So it's like in a real, when the rubber meets the road, it's an imperfect world, and there's gonna be things that are gonna have to happen like that for us to, keep going on in this world. Where the issue is they weren't treating people in a way where they assumed that we were all at equal risk in America.
Right.
That was the main problem.
That's the thing.
Is in like Europe, they looked at the research and they're like, okay, kids are not really at risk.
Yeah.
The young are not really, like young adults are not really at risk. It seems to be killing mostly elderly folk. We just didn't
people with comorbidities.
Right?
Yeah.
We just didn't think about it like that. We were more like just everybody is at risk. Everybody needs this, and that was where some of my issue came. Like, I don't blame, big pharma in a way where it's like this was some sort of conspiratorial, like,
money grab.
They did make a lot of money, but then again, if you make something that's going to save millions of lives, you probably should make money, right?
You should make money off it.
That doesn't mean that it's completely without corruption, right?
Right,
Again, it's
right.
it's nuanced, it's complicated.
Shades of gray.
Shades of gray.
Nothing's
Everybody likes
white.
black and white type of things. Like, this is a conspiracy, this is not, this is a money grab, or this is not. No. It's all of these things and none of these things, right?
Yeah.
And my kind of take on, where I got really irritated was just, I can give you specific examples, like with the masking of the kids. Again, like, when they were saying that, like, kids needed masks in school, that made sense to me. I was like, okay, that makes sense. Like, it's not a big deal. We can, I wasn't really thinking of the detriment to their learning and things like that.
Right.
But I was thinking about it from a safety standpoint. I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then when Rochelle Walensky, the head of CDC, was going on all these talk shows and all these, on TV stations and stuff, touting a study out of Arizona that proved that if children were masked in school, that there was a 3 times lower likelihood of an outbreak. And I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense. Let me go look at the study.
Uh-oh.
And then I look at the study, and the first thing that jumped out, it wasn't peer-reviewed. And having come from the science world and I see that, I was like, wait. I was like, this was not reviewed by anybody else? I was like, that's a huge red flag. I was like, you can't, that's not, I mean, that's like the very bottom of the bottom line.
Yeah, you don't want to base doctrine on something that wasn't reviewed.
Exactly. Not the researchers got to look at the data. So I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to read the study. I'm going to see if it's methodologically sound before I make my opinion on it, right? It's not peer-reviewed. That was a big red flag. Second thing, so they were comparing groups of kids that had the mask versus ones that didn't, right? Which made sense. But what they were doing, and I thought this was a typo at first, they were including kids in the masked group. They were including kids that were distance learning, as in not going to school at all, in the masked group. They were lumped in with the group of masked kids. And I was like, wait a minute.
You can't do that.
You can't do that. I was like, that doesn't make sense. I was like, you're just considering these kids who are at home as being masked and at school. And I was like, okay, that's
complete dishonesty.
Right. I was like, that's not. And again, I was like, holy shit. I was like, that doesn't make sense. Then they followed the non-masked group. I think it was like 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks longer than the masked group, with no explanation as to why. And when you're comparing groups, you can't introduce a confounding variable like that, right? I was like, well, obviously, if they're following these kids for longer, there's going to be a higher likelihood of an
opportunity for them to get infected.
Right, exactly. So I was like, man, this is not a very well-run study. And then lastly, they didn't control for the vaccination status of adults at the schools or in the community at large.
Yeah.
So you can assume that if there's a masking policy for the kids in these schools, you can kind of make the assumption that there's probably more people in the community and adults in the school that have been vaccinated.
Yes.
Right? So they didn't control for that at all statistically, and that is going to affect your outbreak risk, right? So there was all these things. It just, after reading the study, it became obvious that they had a conclusion they wanted, and then they fit the study to fit that narrative, right?
Yeah, they already had their conclusion.
So, like, that was, and again, like, it was a novel situation in terms of the modern era. We were doing the best that we could to try and get through this thing. But it just, when a institution like the CDC is telling me something's true, and then I go look at it, and then it turns out to not be what they said, that was really disheartening. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that I think that all things are conspiracy or anything like that, right? It's all, again, it's like we were saying, it's all nuanced, right?
Yes.
It's
so
it's
maybe the CDC was attempting to give knowledge out that would lead people to make choices that they thought would help.
Exactly.
But you're still being dishonest. Once that becomes known, they don't trust the government anymore. Right.
And like, again, myself, now whenever I hear things, I like that are told to me based on research, and I did this anyways, having a research background, but now I really feel like it's like, especially if there's like national policy based off it, it's like, well, fuck, I should go look at this.
Yeah.
And then it turns out a lot of times when you look into things, it's like, whoa, that's not, either it's not the whole story or it's not a complete accurate representation of like the aggregate of everything they found.
Yeah.
Right?
Again, it's hard. Where do you find nowadays the true objective information sites, whether you want to call it news or whatever, but how it's so hard for people to find objective facts, neutral, that are just giving you the facts, not trying to spin it.
Right. That's why I tend to listen to a lot of, podcasts and things with a lot of a variety of different kind of political leanings.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I like to get a wide variety of things. I listen to a lot of stuff that is kind of left-leaning that, is interesting, but I might not agree with some of it. I listen to a lot of stuff that's right-leaning that's interesting. I might not agree with all of it.
Yeah.
And then I try to make my own conclusions based on what I can. And then also I've gotten better at recognizing, where I can put my time and energy. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like I don't have to have an opinion about everything, which
Right.
is something that I feel like, with social media, we've all forgotten. We don't have to
That-
fucking have an opinion
That
about
is
everything.
a great mental health thing to be aware of.
Right. A lot of times
I don't have to burn my time on some things.
Right. I don't have to read the comments. Right.
That's so funny you mentioned that. That's another thing I got from Rogan is, and I tell everybody, again, it's not like I have a lot of listeners now, but post and ghost.
For now.
Post and ghost.
There you
I
go.
never read the comments. I put it up because I'm, whatever I say, it's stuff I believe in. I'm not doing any hate speech, but I'm like, I don't need people's feedback or opinions.
No,
I'm
right.
doing this because I think it's important. If you like it, cool, watch it. If you don't, I don't need your critiques.
Yeah. And if somebody has a negative opinion of you based on something you say on here, it's like they don't know you, and if they had a conversation with you and you explain your point, they probably wouldn't feel the same way.
Right.
But it doesn't fucking matter because you could say, the sky is blue, and there's going to be some people who get offended or like someone gets angry.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
yes.
So it's like you can't, I've gotten to a point where like I can't bother with people who are going to interpret anything you say from a standpoint of bad faith.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I don't really have a lot of serious conversation about this kind of shit with people, because it's clear a lot of people are not really interested in having a conversation. They're interested in, you think this, so I'm going to mind read and I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. And they're not really there and not really
They're not
caring
really
to listen.
interested in a discussion.
No, and that's why
They want to tell you why they're right.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't talk about like, Israel with a lot of people, because it's like people are not really interested in actually having conversation and steel manning another person's, thinking and be like,
Right.
okay, well, this is why you think what you do, that, that might make sense in a certain way to you. But people are not interested in that. People
That's
are
interesting. You just mentioned the Steelman thing, because I also listen to a lot of Lex Friedman, and he uses that phrase a lot. But then I also listen to Sam Harris a lot. For
I
years
love
I
Sam
have.
Harris.
He was not happy that Lex Friedman had Tucker Carlson on his podcast and talked about the Putin interview.
Right.
And I love Sam Harris, but I kind of go back to I think it's okay that Lex had him on there and let him talk.
Right. I didn't listen to the interview, so I don't know. I would hope that Lex would have pushed back quite a bit, because Tucker Carlson is what the Soviets would refer to as a useful idiot, right? In my opinion.
Right,
They use
right.
the media as a propaganda wing.
Yeah.
And like for him to go to Russia and be like, look at this grocery store. This is amazing. And it's like, look, these prices are cheaper.
That's an oversimplification.
It's just crazy. Like, that is like, he has been so taken by being just the desire to be a contrarian.
Yes.
Regardless of whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Like, he's literally, and also what's crazy to me is like, a lot of people in the right wing are extremely anti-communist, anti-socialist, yet he's worshiping Vladimir Putin.
Right.
Who is literally the head of a communist dictatorship. It's
and
like,
on the podcast, Tucker didn't make it sound like he was worshiping. He just kept spinning the thing where I just wanted to talk to the guy. I feel like it's good to learn about your enemy, and I don't think Lex pushed back as much as you would probably want.
I would want
listen to it when you get a chance.
Yeah, I will. But I mean,
yeah.
I would want it because Vladimir Putin is, if Tucker Carlson has, good opinions of this guy, it's like this guy executes political dissidents in other countries.
I don't think I got the feeling that he had a good opinion of him. It was almost like, hey, I just want to hear his side.
Right, and
I think that's what he put out, but I've only listened to it once.
Right. No, and I mean, hearing his side is one thing, but like I saw the videos of him in Russia.
Oh, see, I haven't seen those.
You should watch the videos of Tucker
Okay.
in Russia because
Okay.
he is like
Is that like
worshiping.
on his YouTube channel or something?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. I saw it on some
okay.
like Reddit.
Okay, he
clips or
wasn't doing that on the Lex Friedman interview.
No,
But
he
I
would
watched that. Yeah.
in Russia, like he was basically he came away. He went to a grocery store and saw that like they had these cool conveyor belts. We don't have these in
He
America.
was almost cheerleading for them.
He was cheerleading for him in a
Okay.
way where it's like, dude, do you realize what this guy does? This guy's literally a dictator.
Yeah.
And it's like if you believe in anything about the American ideals, you cannot be okay with this guy.
Right.
Like it's just, and for him to think about like, well, look at the prices of these groceries. These are cheaper than what we make. And it's like he doesn't recognize the fact that the Russians are making a fraction of what we make, and it's like it's just not, you can't compare literally apples to apples, American to Russian, right?
Right.
You can't do that because it is a completely different situation. And again, like any cozying up to authoritarian dictators is inherently anti-American because that is everything that we strived against to create this country.
That
right?
actually that makes sense. I think that's where Sam was coming from when he was upset about it.
Right. And again, I'm fine with like sunlight being a good disinfectant for bad ideas.
Yeah.
But whenever you're ideologically captured in a way where you can't clearly point out, the fact that, or like you don't make it obvious that you have a problem with somebody who's an authoritarian dictator because of these nice things that he's showing you and the nice things he's saying to you, and the way he's saying like the American left is crazy, right? And so Tucker's like, yeah, right. And it's like, bro, it's like you're literally cozying up to a communist dictator. And it's like the fact that like, the American right wing has an affinity for Vladimir Putin. It's like you guys, they rip on socialism, communism so much. And it's like you were literally talking to a communist dictator without any sort of feelings of animosity because they're not the American left. You know what I mean? It's like, it's mind-blowing, And it's like, but it's, Sam, I do tend to agree with a lot of what Sam Harris, believes in or says in a lot of, for a lot of things. The idea of this idea of like, you don't want to platform someone, that's a little weird because it's like, talking to someone's fine, I would hope that there would be pushback on things that are very clearly antithetical to Western values, essentially, like to liberalism and little L liberalism, right? Like,
Oh, I was gonna. I had this thought. I don't even know how. Oh, because I was like, at some point we have to get out of this political talk.
Yeah, totally.
Wow, we've been going a while. We can wrap it up soon. But born and raised in Texas, how the hell did you end up being a snow sport guy? Did you learn that when you? Oh, So you didn't pick it up until you were up here.
Up here, yeah. No, and it's funny because she's from the Northeast, and she didn't ski until she got out here.
Well, we have bigger mountains.
Yeah, it's a little less icy.
Yes.
But no, one of our classmates, Chelsea, her name's Chelsea. Jasmine was a real good friend with her. Chelsea and her husband at one point just told Jasmine that, hey, we're going on a ski trip. Or I think this is loosely kind of what happened. It was like, we're going on a ski trip. You're coming with us.
Okay.
Rent some skis.
And you ski or board?
Ski.
Okay.
Yeah. And excuse me. Jasmine just fell in love with it. And, whenever she and I first started seeing each other, she would leave on, Saturdays or Sundays to go skiing. And I would usually go over to her place and just hang out, just to have a little time for myself.
Oh, but so you and her both kind of learned around the same time.
I think she had gone for, I want to say 3 seasons before she brought me.
Okay.
And
the first time, I hope you got an official lesson from a proper instructor.
Well, I got a lesson from her, and it was
okay.
It was
good?
proper enough. She knows she was a very, very good teacher.
The only reason I make that point is you can be amazing at a skill, but that doesn't mean you can teach it. Well,
right.
you know that.
Yes.
But she obviously could.
She was very, very effective at teaching. She would give me cues of what I should be thinking about whenever I'm trying to induce a certain movement.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to turn, she was like, imagine you got a button underneath your big toe that you want to press on the opposite side that you're trying. If you're trying to turn left, you're pressing that button with your right big toe.
Oh.
Just having that physical cue, I was just like, oh shit, and I do it, and then you feel the ski catch,
and it works,
and you go, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. So she took me up there for the first time, and she wasn't sure if I was going to like it or not. But she, I couldn't stop thinking about it for like 2 weeks after. I was like, can we go back? Can we go back? Can we go back? I was like, we going next weekend?
Yeah.
And she was so happy. She was like, this is great that you enjoy this. Because it really opens up a lot of opportunities for future vacations.
Oh God, yes.
Like we went to Utah. My sister works for a company that is it's a startup. Well, it's not a startup now. It's called Histosonics, and basically they have technology that where they utilize sound waves to target cancer cells in the liver and induce cell death like apoptosis,
Okay.
while leaving the healthy tissue untouched, and it's working. Right?
Is that like autophagy?
Essentially, well, autophagy would be, that's what happens after the cells lyse, after they die.
Okay.
Our body will kind of eat autophagy. Like
It's a cleansing thing.
essentially, kind of.
That's
Yeah,
what they say
at
fasting
at a
does for you.
molecular level. Yeah, it's
Right.
auto. Meaning like, um, it's doing it to the self, and then phagy is eating. So it's like the act of our immune system, immune functioning. I think. I mean, to be honest,
Getting
it's been
rid
a while.
of useless cells.
Right. The ones that have died and have expelled their contents. Anyways, so her company was having like a seminar or whatever for like a few days in Utah, and so she doesn't ski. It was at Snowbird at the ski resort, and she doesn't ski. My sister doesn't ski, and so she was like, "There's an extra bed at the hotel room. You guys want to come ski?" And like the fact that we both ski and that like she enjoys it, she got me into it, and I enjoy it. We were able to take this trip and go
That's
skiing.
awesome.
And so now we've got plans. We want to go to Colorado. We're going to go like, kind of bucket list would be Mount Fuji in Japan.
You got to do Whistler.
Got to do Whistler.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to do Blackcomb.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Tahoe.
Yeah, haven't been to Tahoe. There's apparently Big Sky in Montana is incredible.
Yes.
I'd love to go to Palisades in Tahoe. But yeah, so being a Texas boy, you wouldn't think that I'd be into skiing, but like,
It's
now
awesome.
I absolutely
It's the best
love
thing ever, especially on a Bluebird day, just being up on the
Exactly.
mountain.
That's why we're going tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
it'll be a Bluebird day.
Yes,
Yeah,
it will.
and it's just there's something about it's also a non-motorized way to be in nature. That's what I love about
That's
it.
a
That's
good way
what
of putting
I
it.
love about it.
We're
You're
just
not
sliding
on a
our happy asses
motorcycle,
down the hill on
You're
some
not
sticks.
on a snowmobile. You're not on a motorcycle or whatever. You're not in a car driving through the woods. I just love being on a piece of whatever sliding down the snow.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, I think about it all the time that I would never see a mountain in that way unless I was skiing or snowboarding.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And we got Bodie into it too. Like he loves it.
He's done it.
Yeah, he's done it.
That's
He's been on the
awesome.
skis I think 3 or 4 times. And he's great. I mean, he can make it down green runs.
And that's the best time to learn. I wish I would have. I got into snowboarding in my 30s. I wish I
Okay.
would have learned as a kid. It would be so much easier
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you can fall, not get hurt.
Yeah. He fell a couple times. Like he has the pizza and the French fries down. The slowing down and speeding up. And it's funny because at first he didn't want to learn how to turn or slow down, and I finally got through to him being like, okay, pretend we're playing Mario Kart. We're on Rainbow Road. There's no walls. What happens if you don't slow down or turn? He's like, we fall off the edge. I was like, exactly. I was like, if you do that on the mountain, you're gonna go into the trees. You're gonna fall off a crevasse.
Yeah.
You're gonna hurt
Hit
yourself.
a tree well or something.
He's
It's
like,
bad.
I was like, that's not good, right? And he's like, yeah, it's not good. So, but then he got it. He got it down to the point where he was doing good on the little bunny hills, and we take him on Buttercup on one of the lifts at Meadows, and he was great going down. And then he didn't he'd get going really fast, and he would kind of panic, and he didn't quite
fall
know how
down.
he would just bail and fall down. First time he did it, he tumbled, full yard sale, skis pop off, everything. And he was like, that was fun. And then the second time he did it, he hit hard, and he was like, that hurt.
Oh, that
I
hurts.
was like,
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yep.
dude, you just got to turn and keep turning to your sideways. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh. I was like, and then you go back and you just keep turning.
Every time you turn, you slow yourself down.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
And when once he started doing that, then he's like, he'd start at the top of the ski run, he'd make it all the way down back to the line, and to get back on the lift with no problem.
Oh, that's awesome.
So he's loving it, so it's been fun. And I mean, I got him into jiu-jitsu. We've been doing that together for a little while.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a super good martial arts for kids
Yeah,
to learn.
definitely. Although sometimes, I can tell sometimes he's not really digging it. I've had to take a little break because I've got a disc issue in my neck, and I'll get some nerve stuff down my arm.
Okay.
But I just have to. I mean, I'm a hobbyist. I'm not training for competitions or anything.
Right.
like that.
It's actually good exercise, but
It's great.
it's also a good life skill just in case you might need it someday.
It's kind of a superpower in certain ways. I
Yes.
know if somebody tried to come at me, they would be in trouble.
Yes,
I'd
it
I'd break their arms.
It is.
Or
It's so
in,
much more
you know,
applicable to the real world than like
Grappling
Taekwondo or something.
Yeah, Taekwondo. It's like any striking type of martial art is obviously good. But if somebody gets into you, and you can grapple, it's like they're in trouble.
Yes.
And I enjoy it. And also, there's lessons that you learn from it that are applicable to life. Like, for instance, I'll be stuck in side control. I'll be, underneath this giant guy he's got like bad breath and like he's like in my face and I can't fucking move. And I'm like, oh God, this sucks. I was like, okay, well, what can I do? I was like, okay, I can wiggle a little bit. I can do one little movement, or I can bring this foot down in this way and pull my knee in a little bit, and that opens up a little more space, and I can get my elbow in. It's a little more space. And then you kind of realize that it's like in any situation, whether it be in martial arts, whether it be in life, whether it be work, whatever.
School and business.
School,
whatever.
business, anything. You can feel like you're in a situation that's insurmountable.
Yeah.
You can feel like you got a big guy on you that's got nasty breath breathing in your face.
Yeah.
But is there one thing you can do today that can get you moving in the right direction? Can I make one phone call? Can I
make this one decision with my finances or whatever?
Make whatever decision is.
Yeah.
There is something to be said about incrementalism, right?
Absolutely.
We kind of have this sense of, whenever we have a goal, you look at the end goal as if like, it is the final destination where you're trying to get, whether it's like physical, like trying to get in shape, trying to lose weight, trying to reach certain goals in business or schooling or whatever. If you look at the end goal and you focus on just that, it's going to feel very daunting to get there because you're like, holy shit, how am I going to get there?
Yeah.
But then you kind of come to a realization. It's like, I can't really control the past and I can't really control the future. It's like, what do I have control over is today.
Yeah.
Right? Or in jiu-jitsu, it's like this single moment is what I have control over,
Yep.
right? I want to get to a point where I'm out from under this guy and I want to submit him or do whatever. But you can't jump from A to B. It's like you have to go in all these little bitty steps to get there. And so once you kind of realize that you can only do what you can do during the span of one day, it makes it less daunting because it's like, okay, can I do this one thing? It's like, okay, I did it. Okay, that's great. And then tomorrow, it's the same thing.
So you
Can I
wake
do
up
this
every
one
morning
thing?
or every day you wake up and you're like, what can I do today that's going to make my life better?
Exactly.
And worry about the next 8 hours or the next 12 hours.
Right.
And that's applicable to every phase of life.
Every single thing,
Yeah.
right? And that's something I did learn at jiu-jitsu, and I didn't quite realize it until, until I was in a certain situation with like work and I wanted something to happen a certain way. Like I wanted to have, I think I wanted to hit a certain number of patients for a certain time or like get a certain number of new patients or whatever. I was like, okay, what can I do? I was like, I can make a phone call. All right, I made the phone call. All right, that's good. The next day I did same thing. I made a phone call or did whatever it was. And then I got there. Like I ended up getting to my goal, but it was in increments.
It's almost like you can relate that to Dave Ramsey's program when it comes to economics. It's the snowball effect.
Right, yeah.
Little steps every day, and all the next thing you know, you're where you wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Oh, my
It's
gosh.
quick
All
in
right.
a lot of
Yeah,
ways.
we
All
went
right.
longer. But I'd be happy to do this with you again, but let's wrap it up
All right,
now.
let's wrap it up.
DJ, I seriously appreciate talking to you. And
appreciate you
and this is why I don't script it.
Yeah.
I knew this was going to be an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
I didn't want to come in with bullet points.
I appreciate that, man.
This was awesome.
All right,
oh, my
man.
gosh. I will shut it off, and then
I
we can
appreciate you.
Then we can all say all the stuff we couldn't say on
All right. That sounds good to me. All right. Hurt yourself.